転生
What if Naruto was the son Poseidon? Final part. Reading. Son of the Earthshaker by Engineer Forever. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto or Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Reading. Son of the Earthshaker. Chapter 2. I'll take over, Piper said. She was curious about what was to come next in the story and eager to personally find out for herself. Naruto ran his fingers over the trident on his arm, an action he used often to soothe his nerves. We all have our quirks. Poseidon nodded. He was crouched at the edge of the camp's gates, waiting for his chosen squad to join him. His thoughts drifted to Abigail, wondering why she hadn't given him more explicit instructions on how to retain Cetus' dagger. Knowing the story well, Naruto hoped he didn't have to plunge his hand into fire or cut it off. Yes, that's psycho. Annabeth commented dryly. It was devotion to the cause. Jason frowned. No, it's lopping off your hand. Crazy. Dionysus nodded. Annabelle's not that far off the mark. Kid was a nut. Edward's hand looked cool, but he really wasn't that into it. Praetor. The guard across from him snapped to attention and Naruto followed suit. Tim, his eye black and his left cheek still swollen. Ares grunted and Frank smirked a little. Approached them and stopped in front of Naruto. His dark eyes peered into Naruto's green with a large amount of withheld hostility in them. And this is why Frank is the only nice son of War One. No. Percy rolled his eyes. They're all so full of hate. Why not move on? Because hate means fighting, Jackson. Duh. Ares drawled as if the boy were stupid. Legionnaire Uzumaki, he said. You are tasked with recovering Cetus' dagger, the weapon lost by a member of the Fifth led by Michael Varus. All we know is that Varus shamed the Legion and failed in his endeavor. He was said to have gone north in search of some answers. I would advise you to follow his tracks, but do not follow his lead. Yes, Praetor. Naruto nodded. The shame of Varus was a story every member of the Fifth learned very quickly. Naruto didn't plan on following the deceased Praetor's lead. We got dumped on a lot for that. Hazel sighed. Oh yeah. Frank nodded. Big time. Jason agreed. Tim turned to leave, but stopped and looked back. And Uzumaki. Naruto didn't even blink at the threatening tone. Yes, sir. Tim narrowed his eyes. Do not return without the dagger. Free to do whatever till then. Percy grinned. I don't plan to, Naruto said. Sir. Tim nodded and walked off. Naruto and the guard both relaxed. What a grouchy bear. Naruto jumped with his fist pulled back. He relaxed when he saw the giggling blonde with starry golden eyes. Naruto put his hand on his chest and relaxed. He scowled at the girl. Misaki, don't sneak up on me like that. Such a stalker. Artemis said. She rubbed her chin. If trained right, she might make for a good hunter. Never. Aphrodite cried out and glared at the goddess of the hunt. Misaki just tapped his nose, her playful smile on her face. But Naruto, where's the fun if I don't? Giving me a heart attack is fun, good to know, Naruto said dryly. That hat did it to me all the time. Percy pouted at his grinning girlfriend. JJ rubbed off on you, Misaki said with a pout. I do not lack humor. Jason frowned. Naruto frowned, thinking of his friend that was still unconscious from the day before. He punched just a tad bit too hard and was afraid that he had accidentally knocked the golden boy into a coma. Wow, he took you to school. Leo, whose side are you on? The one with blonde hair. Quote. Ha, ha, ha. Very funny. Jason clapped sarcastically. I try. Leo grinned back at him. Naruto hoped that wasn't the case and that Jason was just out for a day or two. Smacked him down like a bitch. Ares, Hera glared at her son for mocking her champion. Misaki saw his frown and decided to change topics. So, where's our third? Or did they call in sick? You wish. Zack chuckled as he walked up to join them. Strapped to a crisscrossing belt were two small pouches with short arrows and over his chest was a weapon Naruto blinked at. Is that one of the Vulcan crossbows? He asked. Hephaestus grinned. He and his Roman self did good work. Yep. The one-eyed son of Fortuna grinned and pulled the ballista-inspired weapon from his back. The crossbow was made from steel and the front of it was designed to look like a shrieking eagle. Ooh, Frank said with a gleam of interest and desire in his eyes. Meh, bows are cooler. Apollo shrugged. He and Artemis shared a quick, godly speed high five. Zack pulled a bolt from his pouch and loaded it into the crossbow's line. The imperial gold tip gleamed in the sunlight. He took aim and fired at a tree on the other side of the little Tiber. Perfect waste of an imperial gold bolt. Reyna shook her head. Well, salesmen have to make use of one example to prove their worth. Hermes interjected. Zack rested the bow against his shoulder, looking like a strange mix of a pirate and a hunter, only he was wearing jeans and a purple shirt. Cost me a bit of my winnings at cards, but I think it was worth it. Not bad. Reload must take some time, though, Naruto said. I only need one clear shot and a good position to shoot from, Zack said. True, Apollo nodded. But reload speed is important, too. Indeed. His twin nodded. It was why she didn't like crossbows. They, along with guns, took all the fun out of a hunt. He holstered his crossbow and crossed his arms. Are we ready to go or what? Naruto nodded and turned to the open doors. He led his two companions out and stopped to acknowledge Terminus. We set out for Sibyl's dagger. Take heed, legionnaires, the Olympians are restless. Dangers long since forgotten are popping up now more than ever, Terminus said. Return successfully or don't bother at all. Aut vincere aut mori. Conquer or die. The three nodded to him after they recited the camp's motto in English. So warm and fuzzy, Talia said with a frown. Motivating, though, Jason said. That's not funny. I beg to differ. Terminus nodded back and then looked forward, to the woods. They crossed the little Tiber and left to the tunnel where they would hitch a ride to cross through most of California. They left the heart of the Golden State by taxi. Naruto attributed it to Mercury smiling upon them and thanked the god for the safe passage. I try. Hermes smirked. Then he cursed Venus under his breath for making Misaki so clingy when she slept. Aphrodite giggled. Oh, I take no offense at all. Jason looked at Piper thoughtfully. What? She asked. Nothing. Jason smiled. That certainly explained a few things. As if the back seat of the cab wasn't crowded enough by the three of them alone, Zack being nearly full grown while Naruto was a bit broader than his fellow 11-year-olds at camp. And while she might say otherwise, Misaki was not adorably portable. Nonsense. Just look at her. Aphrodite giggled again. She took up half his seat and left a huge gap between herself and Zack. Naruto groaned as the cabbie drove over a bump. It made him hit his head on the window. He was doing everything in his power not to whack his head on Misaki's, who had claimed his shoulder as her pillow. Misaki's head lightly bounced against his arm and grumbled as she snuggled deeper against him. That is adorable. Hazel said. Misaki is a cute girl. I really want to see the meeting between her and I. Piper mumbled. Naruto glared at the back of the driver's head. Hey, we paid you to get us to the north border, not go over potholes at every turn, Naruto said. Not his fault, Hermes said, blame the poor road work. I tell you, kills me most of the time. You wanted to get north, right? This is the fastest way, the man said. Naruto looked at the driver's ID on the back of the seat. The man's face was impish and reminded Naruto of the fawns that would laze about Camp Jupiter due to his sideburns and curly hair. Reyna grumbled under her breath. Typical fawns, such lazy things. His name was, oddly enough, Jason. Jason P. Garrick. Garrick. Hermes beamed. I can't thank you enough, Mr. Garrick, Naruto said. He shifted his now numb shoulder and Misaki grumbled, wrapping her arms around his tightly. I mean, driving us for 6 hours already. Hey, as long as the money is good, I'll take you as far as you need to go. Just don't tell my boss, okay? Garrick grinned into the mirror. He so has to be mine. Hermes grinned. Naruto vaguely felt that the grin was familiar but brushed it off. Yeah. So, how far into Oregon can you take us? I've got a sister that works as a park ranger at Crater Lake, Garrick said. Won't be cheap though. Who made that one again? Hades asked as the gods shrugged. Naruto shuffled his left arm into his pocket as best he could. Misaki was really good at keeping him in place, and dug around for a moment. He pulled out a golden coin that looked like Julius. $1 coin. I don't think that'll cut it, kid, Garrick said. Naruto grinned. It's from ancient Rome. The market value is about 50,000 euros. Yes, throw around prices like that. Good way to get shot. Ares snickered, getting a glare from his sea uncle. Garrick pulled over to a curb with a screech. He got out of his seat and opened the back door. His hand was held out expectantly and there was a gleam in his eye. Someone's a greedy old man. Leo commented. If you're lying, I'll have the three of you in juvie faster than you can say, money, he said. Naruto put the coin in his hand and Garrick began turning it over this way and that. He finally brought it up to his mouth and bit down on it. Garrick pulled it away and pocketed the coin. Very well. I'm a man of my word. To Crater Park it is. Minor 49er. Apollo sung until Artemis stopped him with a smack on the arm. Are we there? Zack asked as he woke up from Garrick's enthusiasm. No, Naruto said as the cab started to drive again. He tried to get comfortable, but Misaki was making it difficult. Hey, can you wake her up? I'm losing feeling in my arm. That's not the only thing I bet he's feeling. Percy snickered. Zack looked at Misaki blearily and poked her in the shoulder. Misaki groaned and hid her face in Naruto's arm. Ah, Aphrodite cooed. She's so cute. Why can't you be the cuddly? Percy teased Annabeth, who gave him a pouty glare. Be thankful for what you get. Zack looked back at Naruto and shrugged. He adjusted himself in his seat and leaned against the window. Wake me when we get wherever we're going. What? Wait, no, Zack, I want to sleep too. Dude, come on. They arrived at Crater Lake National Park 3 hours later. Eventually Naruto did fall asleep, but his was more akin to a nap than a good rest. His arm was numb from the shoulder down and his legs were like noodles, and not the good kind. No ramen, Hazel sighed sadly. Naruto needed a second before he could get out of the taxi. That felt really good. Misaki said as she stretched her arms above her head once she was out of the cab. She turned to Naruto with a smile on her face. How'd you sleep, Naruto? Percy glanced at Annabeth, she would so ask something like that if that happened to them. What? Nothing. Naruto was torn between lying and glaring at Misaki. Not wanting to lie to a friend and just too tired at the moment to really glare at her, he decided on an indifferent answer. Okay, I guess. I had the best pillow, Misaki said. Naruto felt his cheeks heat up and looked at the sky, trying to forget that statement and what it implied. Stupid hormones. Poor guy. Frank snickered. I hit my head against the window a lot. Naruto glared at the innocently whistling Garrick, who was looking over his new coin. Do you need a kiss to make it better? Misaki asked. His cheeks darkened. Why do you have to make it weird, Misaki? There's that denseness. Annabeth looked amused. Misaki's got her work cut out for her, Talia snickered. Misaki pouted. It's not weird, it's a perfectly good question. Aphrodite nodded in agreement eagerly. A very good question, Zack said. He grinned while Naruto glared at him. What? It is. If you're all done flirting with each other, let's go see if my sister is here, Garrick said. The group glared at him for various reasons but followed nonetheless. They walked down the dirt trail to a small wooden building that had a sign at the end of the path, Crater Lake National Park Ranger Station. Above the doors were two others, Visitor Information and Bookstore. Garrick walked up to the door and knocked on it. The door opened and a woman with impish features similar to Garrick's walked out. Another. The thief god grinned impishly. Her hair was not curly, and it wasn't dark. It was actually rather straight and pulled back into a ponytail under a hat. She was dressed in brown and tan ranger clothing, with a badge pinned to her chest. The woman had the same blue eyes as Garrick, glancing at him as he held the coin up. Her eyes widened and she looked past him at the group, staring at their shirts. She's in the know. Hazel said. Some legionaries leave. Not exactly unheard of. Reina commented. Still, talk about a chance meeting. Hey Joan. I brought some friends of yours. Got any coffee? I've been driving for hours. Garrick walked past her into the ranger outpost like he owned the place. Peter. Joan turned and stormed in after him. She turned back to the kids with a scowl on her face. Well, come in, then. That's not very nice manners to your guests, Joan. Shut it, Peter. Dad wouldn't be pleased. Well, yeah, I'm god of travelers. You have to give hospitable behavior, Hermes said with a wag of his finger. Since when have I ever pleased him? Daddy issues. Talia snorted. From a grown woman. Wow. Funny, since you're never going to grow up. Shut it, D'Angelo. Excuse me. Naruto cut into the siblings, bickering. We just need to cut through. We're on a, church mission. Naruto and Misaki looked at Zack and he shrugged. Technically, we are. Kid ain't lying. Apollo snickered, it was a good cover. Save the lies, Joan said, taking her hat off and hanging it on a rack. I know you're from Camp Jupiter. Hazel smirked, called it. How? Naruto asked. I thought the mist covered our shirts. Not for monsters. I wondered why a cabbie agreed to take us to the border without any questions. Zack reached over his shoulder and grabbed his crossbow. Naruto clenched his fists and Misaki pulled her dagger out. Kill the old people. Nico cried out. Please don't. I have enough work as it is, Hades said dryly. Whoa. Hey. I'm just a cabbie. Garrick held his hands up. I swear it on my mother's grave. Put them away, Joan said. She took a seat behind her desk and opened a drawer. She pulled out a flask and undid the cap. Joan took a drink from the flask. She replaced the cap and rolled the sleeve of her shirt up, revealing a familiar set of letters, and above it was a caduceus. 3 bars were under the letters SPQR. Knew she was mine. Hermes grinned. Why only 3 lines? Reina asked. Her question caused Hermes to frown. You're a legionnaire. Naruto gaped in surprise, lowering his fists. Misaki lowered her dagger and Zack put his crossbow away. If we're showing off tattoos, I guess I should show mine, too. Garrick chuckled and rolled his own sleeve up. The same markings were on his arm, only he had 10 lines instead of 3. He graduated, it seems. Jason commented but narrowed his eyes, but why a cabbie? Why not? Hermes asked his half-brother. Traveler God's kid. Good luck. Duh. Oh. Naruto let it sink in before he glared at Garrick. You knew we were on a quest. I figured. Garrick rolled his sleeve back down and turned around to make some coffee. When you're told to make a stop outside of the tunnel to camp, you pretty much prepare to drive a few legionnaires around. So what are your cohorts? I was a member of the 3rd, myself. 5th, Naruto and Zack said proudly. Those of the 5th cheered. 2nd, Misaki said, smiling pleasantly. Garrick whistled. 2 members of the 5th. Wow, they let you go on quests after what Varys did. Jason's jaw tightened, Frank groaned and Hazel frowned. Naruto and Zack glared at him along with Joan. Shut up, Peter. The park ranger took another sip from her flask. So what fool quest are you doing? Someone's bitter. Hades said. Hot meat kettle. Zeus commented, getting a glare from his eldest brother. Naruto shared a look with Zack and Misaki before he looked back at Joan. We're looking for Sivala's dagger. We know the legionnaire that had it went on the quest with Varys. Joan scowled. You might as well turn around and go home. No one is bringing that dagger back. This just got interesting. Ares grinned. How do you know? Misaki asked. Because I was on that quest, too, Joan said. The Romans gained a sad look. But according to the report, Varys said there were no survivors. Zack clenched his fists tightly. We failed in our quest, which we volunteered for. Joan took another sip of her flask. She scowled. Aut vincere aut mori. You didn't come back. Naruto frowned. That was basically the same as being declared dead. I know the feeling. Hazel frowned. Frank gave her a half hug. Why would I want to? Joan asked. Garrick went over to her side and put his hand on her shoulder. She shrugged it off and glared at him. Don't. I'm over it. Clearly. Leo nodded. Yeah, obviously, Garrick said. He rolled his eyes and went to the coffee machine, opening the mini fridge tucked underneath it. Would you guys like anything? I'll take some black, Zack said. He plopped down into a chair and yawned while he rubbed at his eye patch. Just some milk if you have it, Misaki said. Milk is good for you. Aphrodite nodded. She's a big girl now. Piper sang with a giggle. She wandered over to pictures on the wall and scrutinized them. Probably looking over the clothes they wore. Water, Naruto said. A bottle of water flew his way from where Garrick was and the light gleamed off of his bracer. Joan dropped her flask with a gasp of shock. The 3 from Camp Jupiter looked at her curiously, but she continued to stare at the bracers on Naruto's wrist. Why you? You're a. Joan looked like she couldn't fathom it. Naruto watched her face carefully as he held his wrist up. Yes. I'm the son of Neptune. More bashing on my Roman line. Poseidon scowled. Percy joined him. Ha. I knew he wouldn't hold true to the pact. Alan so owes me $50, Garrick said. Jupiter wouldn't keep it my ass. It was his idea. Zeus coughed a little and Poseidon looked a little sheepish. Actually, funny story. Zack told the 2 former legionnaires about Jason and they gaped. Zack laughed at their reactions. A son of Jupiter and a son of Neptune. Joan tossed her flask into the garbage. Too much booze. Percy snickered. Nonsense. Dionysus waved off. You can never have too much. Quote. They can die if they drink too much. They're half mortal, Apollo pointed out. Quote. Oh, that's horrid. Garrick pestered Zack for more information, eager to know what gossip he could spread among the small community outside of New Rome. Naruto, come here. Misaki waved Naruto over. He joined her and she pointed at a picture. In the photograph was a girl that looked like a younger Joan. She had her arms around a boy with black hair and brown eyes while they sat in front of a lake. Both of them had Camp Jupiter shirts on. Joan had a sword on her hip whereas on the boy's belt was a sheathed dagger. Look at the title. Summer 1981. Crater Lake. Quote. That's why she didn't go back, Naruto said. In the picture, Joan didn't look that much older than him, maybe a year or two tops. Oh, that's so beautiful. Aphrodite sighed. Mom, her boyfriend died. Piper said. So, utterly, heart-wrenchingly, tragically beautiful. Quote. I'm related to that. Be afraid, Jason. Be afraid. Piper groaned as she rested her head on her boyfriend's shoulder while he chuckled. That's so tragic, Misaki said, covering her mouth as her eyes watered. Where is the dagger? Naruto asked, interrupting Zack. He agreed with Misaki, but now he had a lead and he fully intended to follow it through. The two former legionnaires looked at him and he pressed on. The dagger of Sibylla, where is it? Quote. Even for you it's suicide, Joan said. Ha. We're made to survive suicide. Percy grinned. Annabeth smacked him, that's not something to gloat about. But I do it, like, all the time. The son of the sea pouted. Don't remind me, Annabeth groaned. Maybe. Garrick came over with a glass of milk and a mug for Zack. The two took the offered drinks with gratitude and he turned to his sister. He is the son of the sea god. It won't matter. Joan slammed her hands on her desk and stood up. I had to run away while Wally died stalling it. This one sounds nasty. Frank muttered. Was that who the boy was? Misaki asked while Naruto and Zack shared a concerned look. Joan scowled at her, but Misaki kept a pleasant smile on her face while she drank her milk. Yes. That was Wally Bronson. He was a legacy of Bologna. Reina's heart clenched at that. Terrible, just terrible. What kind of monster was it? I'm sorry for your loss, Misaki said. She set her half-empty glass on the table and looked Joan in the eye. Can you tell us how he died? Joan swallowed. He was killed by the Cetus. Whoops. Poseidon said, looking sheepish. Quote. The Cetus. The thing that laid waste to Ethiopia after Cassiopeia insulted Neptune. Zack asked. His eye bulged out of his head. The Nereids. Poseidon corrected. You just wanted to look good in front of 50 hot water nymphs, Dad. Percy. Poseidon held his heart, clearly stunned at the truthful words of his demigod son while his family laughed. Naruto looked at his friend with the question written on his face. Neptune sent a monster after a whole country because of one woman's insult. The Nereids were insulted. It reflects on me if I let it go. Poseidon huffed. And again, 50 hot water nymphs. Quote. You're not one to talk, Zeus. Yes, Joan said. Tears brimmed her eyes and she buried her hands in her face. I saw him get eaten. That's horrible. Hazel whispered, moving closer to Frank. All the couples bunched together. Leo frowned and folded his arms over his chest. He missed Calypso. Nico idly thought of Will. Reina frowned, wondering about her love life. Talia just tossed a piece of popcorn in her mouth, completely disinterested. Where is it? Misaki asked. The Columbia River, Joan said. Off the coast of Lois Island. We didn't even bury him a grave. I never got to say goodbye. I think it's time you get on with your quest, Garrick said as Joan buried her face in her hands. He had a frown on his face and Naruto knew that there would be no arguing over it. They got up and thanked Garrick for the ride and the drinks. Naruto stopped at the door, turning back to look at the two. I won't tell. You know, that she's. Reina pursed her lips. I'm unsure how to properly call that one. Then don't bother with it. Piper suggested. Thank you, Garrick said, his arm wrapped over Joan's shoulders in a hug. Naruto left feeling that he might have overstayed his welcome. He stepped into the cold Oregon air and shivered lightly. Zack and Misaki looked at him and he sighed. So, now where do we go? Naruto asked them. I snagged a map before we left and I found this brochure, Zack said, holding a green pamphlet out to Naruto. Naruto took it from him and opened it up. He gave Zack a confused look. Horseback tours. And the equine for the win again. The sea god smirked. Olives. Damn you. Poseidon glared at his rival. Why not? Zack shrugged. You're the son of Neptune. God of the sea and horses, maybe you're a horse whisperer or something. He is. Percy nodded, it was weird at first for him too. Yeah, maybe. This would be so much easier if we could drive, Naruto said. He sighed and gave the map back to Zack. You lead, we'll follow. I suck at reading maps. That's why you're not getting promoted anytime soon. Zack chuckled. Naruto grumbled to himself while Misaki patted his shoulder reassuringly. Support your man, Misaki. Aphrodite cheered. He opened the map and turned right. This way. A few hours passed since they left the ranger station and they had stopped to rest. The three legionnaires set up camp halfway around Crater Lake. Naruto was gathering firewood when he heard the first growl. He brushed it off and knocked another dead tree down, silently thanking his father for bestowing him with his gift of strength. Poseidon smirked. Anytime. Neptune was a complicated subject for Naruto. He was one of the three brothers, alongside Jupiter Maximus, or the Transformer wannabe as Naruto recently started to call him. Everyone snickered at that, even Jason, and Zeus turned an interesting shade of purple. Transformer wannabe. Zeus repeated sourly. Bastard in disguise. Zeus glared daggers at Hades, who smirked back at him while Poseidon openly laughed. And Pluto, so Naruto respected Neptune's strength and status as a god. That was concrete, even if it got him some flack in the cohort. However, when it came to Neptune as a father, Naruto was conflicted in his feelings. Sure, Neptune was one of the Olympians, but he was a longtime enemy of Rome, dating back to the destruction of Troy. He sunk Roman ships more than any other, and even one of his legacies had been rumored to cause an earthquake in San Francisco back in the early 1900s. Frank frowned at that. It wasn't true. He felt sorry for Naruto taking the flack for that. It wasn't right. That being said, Neptune was his father, the male that provided the necessary key within his mother to make him a possibility. You know. Sex. Apollo. Artemis scowled as her twin grinned. It's true. And, considering Ninja Waifu's appearance, I don't blame him. Pig. I love to be a ham. Naruto didn't even think to ask his mother how she had met Neptune, he was just elated to know who she was. Jason had a bitter look on his face and Talia outright scowled. Naruto wanted to know why she had been chosen, why he had been born with a huge burden, cursed to be hated. Naruto wanted to meet Neptune, to get some clear answers. Poseidon frowned, hoping his other met the boy soon. He wanted to know if he was just an antithesis to Jason, if he was a spur-of-the-moment accident or a result of something else. Something else, the sea god assured, something wonderful. Focus, Naruto said. He looked back at the downed tree and bowed his head. Thank you, Faunus, for the supplied tree. Hermes broke into a sad smile. The minor gods were something that interested Naruto, and he respected them perhaps more than he did the Olympians, and thanked them whenever he could or remembered to. All that hard work to keep the world in working order and only 12 were recognized. It was certainly unfair in Naruto's opinion, but on the other hand, that was how the military worked. Pretty much. Reina commented in agreement. That was how the wild worked. You fight or you die. Look out. Naruto frowned, wondering who said that, and turned around. He felt immense pain in his jaw and crumpled to the ground. Sucker punch. Ares cheered. Naruto rolled out of the way as a large brown elbow landed in the dirt where he once stood. Attached to the elbow was a furry body, like a bear's. Only this bear was walking upright like a human and was wearing Levi's. It's them. Percy exclaimed. Annabeth glared at the picture. Damn, missed. Don't want to cut you. You got all that juicy flesh. The bear man growled. Orias. Naruto ducked under the charging pounce of another bear man and he stumbled back, tripping over the tree he had moments ago knocked down. Moron, Ares scowled. He landed with a grunt and scrambled quickly back to his feet, facing the two monsters with his fists up. The tridents on his wrist shone and the bracers unfolded into his two gauntlets of imperial gold. Naruto glared at them, all the way to their eyes that were 7 feet from the ground. Shiny, the bear man that had spoken before said. Ooh. Leo said, me want shiny. Easy, Leo. Piper giggled. The other, Orias, stared along with his brother at the gauntlets. Yeah, shiny. Mind telling me who you guys are and why you guys attacked me? Naruto asked with a glare. Your food. We're hungry. I would have never thought. Percy gasped mockingly. Glad we sorted this out, Naruto said. He fell to his back when Orias leapt at him again. Naruto drove his feet into Orias' stomach and tossed him back into the brush. He rolled out of the throw and hopped back to his feet with his fists up. Can I get a name? Agrius. Agrius said with a swing of his massive paw-like fist. Naruto blocked it with a stumble. You're strong, but I'm stronger, Naruto said. He brought his other fist back and cracked Agrius across the face. The bear man was sent to the ground hard. Yeah. Jason grinned. He's going to be feeling that. Percy smirked. Wait, this is before our Sea of Monsters quest, right? Yep. Annabeth nodded and her eyes widened. Oh, they might mention him. Percy nodded. Exactly. Naruto turned and caught Orias' fists with his hands. They struggled for a moment but Naruto started to tighten his grip and twist Orias' hands. Orias grunted and slowly dropped to his knees. Kneel. Kneel before Zod. Apollo ordered. I hate that movie. Zeus grumbled. Ah, right. Apollo cleared his throat and then pointed at the ground. Kneel. Kneel before Zeus. Zeus glared at his sun-driving son. Who knew Apollo could be such a smart ass? Let him go. Agrias tackled Naruto from the side. The bear man growled at him and kept the son of Neptune pinned to the ground. Other people near. Smell them on you. Where? I'd rather die, Naruto said. Then die. Agrias reared his head back and opened his mouth. Orias, your brother stole your meal. Get it back. Misaki with the charms peak for the win, Piper grinned. Agrias turned and snarled at the new voice. He yelped when his brother suddenly tackled him off of Naruto. Naruto scrambled to his feet while the two bears fought. A hand grabbed his arm and pulled him along. Nice timing, he said. Thanks Misaki. Misaki smiled at him. Anytime cutie. Anytime, cutie. Annabeth told Percy with a sly look. Percy grinned back at her. How do you know their names? Naruto asked. Every child and legacy of Venus knows those two, Misaki said. I didn't. Piper admitted with a pout. She looked like she ate something sour, which was a look Naruto had only seen on her face once. He silently pitied the poor legionnaire that was still doing all of her chores for her because he got yellow lemonade for her instead of pink lemonade. Misaki stopped when they were behind a large tree and looked back at where they left the two bear men. Agrias and Orias. They're from before Rome, very, very old monsters. Their mother, Polyphont, insulted Venus by running off to join Diana's group of maidens. Venus made her fall in love with a bear. Artemis scowled at Aphrodite, who huffed. If she had just listened to me, then maybe she wouldn't have done it with a bear. Mortals have choices. The huntress told her. Perhaps, but I will not be slighted. The Lady of Doves smiled wickedly. Piper suddenly shuddered as a cold chill went up her spine. Harsh. You can't do that, right? Naruto asked. Misaki smiled at him. I wouldn't make you fall in love with a bear, if that's what you're worried about. Way to avoid the questions. Jason said, looking at Piper with a slight worry. He got a glare. I won't do that. Heck, I don't even think I can. Good. That didn't answer his question at all, but Naruto decided not to focus on that and looked back to where the twins were. So how were they beaten before? Mercury was sent to punish them, but Mars stopped him because they were his legacies and they were turned into birds. Ares scowled at the reminder while Hermes grinned like a loon. Naruto closed his eyes in frustration. Great, so we've got to change them into birds. Not necessarily, Misaki said. We just have to keep them separated. I can take one out if we do that, Naruto said. But how are we going to keep them apart? Like this, Misaki said. She stepped out from behind the tree and whistled. The twin sons of Polyphont turned to the source of the whistle and she blew them a kiss. Daughter of Venus, meet ready and willing to be eaten, boys. You just have to catch me first. Well, she does make good bait, Artemis smirked. The prettiest kind there is. Aphrodite huffed right back. With that, Misaki ran off into the woods. Agrias and Orias untangled from each other and ran after her. Naruto clothes-lined Agrias as he ran past. Now go for the pin. Apollo cheered in his WWE shirt. His blow knocked the older twin to the ground while Orias continued his pursuit. You travel with her ilk. You must die, Agrias said as he got to his feet. So glad I didn't meet them, Piper said, they seemed annoying. He tried to tackle Naruto, but the shorter blonde caught Agrias by his arms and reared his head back. The son of Neptune stumbled back along with Agrias, both of them rubbing their heads. I love that move. Ares grinned. That explains so much. Athena said, no wonder you don't have any brain cells left. Hey. Bad idea, bad idea, bad idea, Naruto said to himself. He tried to shake the dazed spots out of his eyes, which cost him as Agrias drove his knee into Naruto's stomach. Naruto doubled over and got hit with a following blow to the back of the head. Ouch, Frank winced, he beat up a giant as a bear. He knew that had to hurt. Head hurts, hungry and furious, Agrias said. He turned Naruto over onto his back and grabbed him by the hair. Not going to eat you anymore. Going to beat you to death and feed you to Orias. That's so much better. Percy rolled his eyes. Naruto spat in the bear's eye and brought his left fist up to crack Agrias in the jaw. Agrias stumbled back and rubbed at his eye, a growl escaped his mouth. Naruto took advantage of the distraction and swept the abomination onto his back with a low kick. Naruto grabbed the bear-like snout in his right hand and grabbed under Agrias' right arm with his left. He struggled for a second before he successfully lifted Agrias off the ground and launched him into the air. Like a rage doll. Talia smirked, nice throwing arm. I see major leagues for this kid, Apollo grinned. Naruto then went to a relatively small tree, about 3 feet in diameter, and took hold of the trunk. He pulled until the roots gave out and ripped the tree from the ground. The tree! Demeter exclaimed in horror. It was about 20 feet high. Agrias crashed down through branches and landed with a loud boom. Naruto hefted the tree over his shoulder and swung it like a bat just as Agrias started to rise. Agrias was struck in the right side and was sent for a short fly, taking down a few more trees in the process. That a boy, slugger. Poseidon laughed, mirth in his eyes. Naruto dropped the tree to the side and ran after the monster, intending to finish him off before he could get back to his senses. Naruto found Agrias as the bear man rose from the ground, a tree on his back leg. Little annoying shit. Must be son of Hermes. Must be, Agrias said under his breath. Sadly no. Hermes sighed. Naruto blinked in confusion. Son of Hermes. You mean Mercury, right? Agrias scowled. Fake gods. Imposters. Stole the lives of my family, the gods did. Beloved father Ares turned us to birds. Before Rome. You guys are gracious. That explains the weird names, Naruto said. Not weird. The gods muttered with frowns. Agrias spat blood to the side and glared at Naruto. Kill you dead, boy. Feed you to Orias. Yeah, I don't see that happening. Naruto cracked his knuckles. Right now your brother is being led on a wild goose chase and. Cutie. Might want to turn around. Leo said with a wince. Naruto paled and slowly did just that. He groaned and palmed himself in the head once he did. Misaki was being held by her neck in Orias' arm, with an annoyed look plastered on her face. Misaki is not amused. Hazel giggled at the face. Damsel in distress. Artemis chuckled at the image, irking the love goddess at her words. You got caught. Well, I can't run around forever. Misaki crossed her arms and pouted. I tripped, sorry for not having night vision. Besides, it seems the other one put mud in his ears. I can't talk him out of holding me. Earplugs, huh? Leo rubbed his chin, glancing at Piper. Oh, ha. She rolled her eyes. Still, that sucked for Misaki. Good job, Orias. Tonight we feast on Aphrodite's daughter. Agrias grinned and got to his feet. And the son of, Apollo. I wish. Apollo groaned, all my awesome kids come from my Greek side. Got none on the Roman side except Abby. Hardly, Naruto said with a snort. That would make him related to Octavian. That was something Naruto could do without. He clenched his hands back into fists and tensed in preparation to move. I'm the son of Neptune. Agrias blinked and a moment of silence passed before his grin widened. Son of Poseidon. Lucky day. We feast on Aphrodite's flesh and get back in Zeus' good graces. Such a baby, you broke the law, too. Poseidon rolled his eyes. You only did it after I did. For both of them. Zeus pointed out with a smug look. Poseidon glared at Zeus for that one. Naruto frowned in confusion. Why would his death put them in Jupiter's good graces? He banished the question from his mind and prepared to act. Heads up. Naruto, Misaki, Orias and Agrias looked up. Somewhere in the woods, it sounded like someone was dragging a stick along a picket fence. Bolts lined with golden heads started to fly out of the trees at their feet. They're swarming, scatter. Leo cried out. Flee. Frank joined him. One hit Orias in the arm and he dropped Misaki to the ground. Orias whimpered and ran off into the woods. Idiot. Agrias snarled and ran after him. Kill you next time, son of Poseidon. No, you try to kill the other son of the sea. Percy corrected. Percy, they can't hear you. I'm just saying is all. Percy told his girlfriend with a shrug. Naruto growled and made to run after them but stopped when a final bolt landed in front of him. Kill denied. Nico whistled. He turned and glared at Zack, who landed from where he was in the trees. The older legionnaire holstered his crossbow onto his back with a small frown on his face. We don't need to run after them. We've got a quest, remember? So we just let them run off. Naruto asked. No, please go kill them. Percy said, seriously, it would save them for their Sea of Monsters quest. Zack shook his head. We can't afford to get lost. This area is to their advantage. We need to get to the stables. It's good to have a leveled-headed member on a quest. Annabeth nodded, the boy was smart. Naruto glared at him for another moment before he sighed. Yeah, you're right. I know I am, Zack said, smiling. He walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. And I'm glad you think so, too. Listening to advice is what makes you a better commander. Annabeth gave an amused look to Percy, who sheepishly grinned back. There's more than one way to skin a bear. Indeed. Artemis grinned. Maybe if we're lucky they'll run into Diana and her cheerleaders, Misaki said. Cheerleader. Talia growled. Fitting. Nico grinned, getting a stormy look from his cousin. But the son of Hades just shrugged it off. Dusting her pants off with a pout. Damn bears got my clothes dirty. The fiends. Aphrodite gasped. Woe is us, Naruto said wryly. He chuckled at the puffed cheeks Misaki gained and looked to Zack. So, oh wise one, which way now? Wise. Please. Athena scoffed. That way, Zack said, pointing in the opposite direction that the twin monsters ran. We're all awake now, we should make the best of it. Right, lead on, Naruto said. I thought he was leader. Jason asked. The perks of command, telling someone to do it for you. Percy grinned. Amen. Reina smiled as well. I want to read next. Annabeth said and Piper handed the book over to her. Annabeth immediately began to read. It smells horrible here. How is that even possible? Misaki asked as they walked through the stables near Crater Lake. Uptight, isn't she? Poseidon frowned. Well, most stables are unkempt, Poseidon. Aphrodite told him. Amen to that. Percy shivered at the memory of the job he performed for Jirian. Just plug your nose like I am, Zack said, his fingers firmly pinched around his nose. He looked at Naruto. How are you not bothered by this? It's worse than the stink bombs Cameron of the second cohort uses in the war games. Who do you think deals with most of the latrine duty? Naruto grumbled. Upside to being the son of the god of the sea, he has control over water. Would be neat, if his power wasn't mostly abused by his cohort to clean the latrines. So glad that never happened to me. Percy blanched. Yeah, just that one time you came to camp. Percy looked at his girlfriend. Oh, come on, you know that was an accident. Maybe. That, and he was much better with controlling quakes, not something he's proud of, but something that's more useful, in his opinion. Plus, there wasn't a lot of water near the fields of Mars. Wasn't like he could make a tidal wave to wipe out the opposition. That would be useful. Maybe we should plug up the stream. Dionysus mused. No. Poseidon told him, which caused the wine god to pout. Misaki turned to him with her hand pinching her nose shut, giving him the best apologetic look she could muster. You poor dear. Naruto let a smile cross his face at the nasal voice that came out as opposed to her usual regal one. Artemis snorted a laugh that earned her a glare from the love goddess. It's not so bad. I can't really smell anything that bad anymore. Good for you, Zack said dryly. He pointed at the horse in the last pen. You go talk to him and we'll wait outside. Good idea, and be careful. Keep an eye out for the bird brains, Naruto said, getting a nod from both Zack and Misaki. The two vacated the stables quickly while he walked down to the stable. The horse neighed at him and snorted on his approach. Naruto looked it over with a bit of awe. The horse was massive, easily larger than the few Pegasi that hung around camp. Its build was like a Clydesdale Naruto had seen on those weird adult drink commercials on television, but its coat was a striking gold, almost like his hair, and the mane was a platinum shade of yellow. Now that is one handsome horse. Poseidon praised. A bit meaty. Athena retorted. Oh joy. Another filthy brat that wants to feed me sugar cubes and stroke my muzzle. I like this horse already. Mr. D beamed. The voice was that of an older man, one who was wise but weary. Naruto furrowed his brow at the judgment. Wow, you do know what they say about assumptions, right? He asked. The horse blinked and turned his head. You can understand me. Yeah. Naruto scratched the back of his neck. The bracer glinted in the moonlight and the large stallion straightened up. A son of Poseidon. Nope, I'm right here. Percy pointed to himself, getting a nudge from Annabeth as she rolled her eyes. Another Greek. Weird. Neptune. The horse seemed to ignore him as a light grew in his surprisingly dark eyes. I knew one would come, I knew. I told Zanthus to hold out, but that stubborn colt refused to listen to reason. Well, look who's too optimistic now, Zanthus. Oh, Hera said as she recalled the name. She frowned lightly. Him. Whoa, slow down, Naruto said with his hands up. Who are you and who's Zanthus? The stallion looked slightly embarrassed and dipped his head down. 1,000 pardons, my lord. It's been so long since I've been near the sea that I've forgotten its scent. The horse ducked its head down in a bow. I am Balius, son of Zephyrus and brother to Zanthus, the steed of Achilles. Oh joy, them. Apollo blanched. Yeah, Thetis still gave him dirty looks at times for helping Paris. As did Artemis. Achilles. You mean that dude with the foot problem? Naruto smirked slightly in amusement. Sure, the guy was one of Greece's greatest heroes, but come on. He was beaten by an arrow to the foot. It was his only weak spot. Percy pointed out. I still can't believe you had his curse, Jason said to Percy. Neither can I. The son of Poseidon admitted. Balius snorted and shuffled. Yes, but he was still a hero and I'm proud to have been in his and his father's service for as long as I was. Enough of that, my lord, it's been millennium since I've seen a demigod. Begging your pardon, my lord, but I never got your name. He's so respectful. Percy pouted. Blackjack could learn a thing or two from him. Ah, but he loves his boss. Piper teased. The son of the sea laughed in agreement. Sorry, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said. He brought his arm over his chest in a formal greeting. Member of the 5th cohort, of the 12th Legion Fulminata. Fulminata. A Roman. Balius asked before he went silent and shook his head. It could be worse, I suppose. I could have never been found. That's rude, Frank said. Well, you guys never treated Neptune right. Poseidon pointed out. Point. The legacy of Poseidon conceded. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto asked with a frown. Balius' eyes widened. I meant no offense, my lord. But you must understand the Romans' view on Lord Poseidon Neptune and vice versa. Naruto grimaced. Yeah, I know their view. He shook the depressing memories off and his eyes met Balius once more. Whatever, so think you can do me a favor. My lord, if you can get me out of this blasted stable, I'll be at your beck and call whenever you need a ride. I'll follow you back to the Legion and breed off for a cavalry. Hazel's eyes sparkled at the proposal. She loved her ponies after all. We could use some strong horses. Reina openly admitted, they were limited to that regard. Naruto scratched his chin. We could use a few more stallions around. The Pegasi aren't as fertile as we'd like, but that's probably from Neptune. The Romans looked at the smirking Poseidon. Reap what you sow. Athena looked conflicted to agree with her rival. My lord is very clever, Balius noted with a nod. A lack of respect to Lord Neptune would offend him. He is the father of all equine, our lord, and as such can determine who does and who doesn't deserve stables full of Pegasi. Pray tell, my lord, but why don't you have a steed already? Surely, even the Romans can see that a son of Neptune would do well with a mount. Because they Senate can be biased and spiteful. Jason sadly admitted. Reina nodded in agreement. Stop calling me that, Naruto said. He did agree with Balius on the part about him having a horse or Pegasi, and his cohort had even suggested it to the praetors. The council had denied the request, though. Calling you what, my lord? Balius tilted his head. That, my lord. Naruto grimaced as he said it. I'm just a legionnaire, not a high-class citizen. Titles aren't really my thing. Balius neighed as though he were insulted. But you are a son of Lord Neptune, my lord. I cannot, in good knowledge, speak of you so lowly. Oh man, a bootlicker, Nico rolled his eyes. They're all respectful. Percy told him. Yeah, but this is like cranked to 11. Quote. Masaki's going to love you. Naruto mumbled. He looked at a saddle and scratched his head. Well, think you could carry 3 of us. Balius ducked his head. Apologies, my lord, but while I may be large, 3 may be against my limit. Balius perked up and neighed. But, if I could get out of this stable, I could find Zanthus and he could help us. Especially if he knew he'd be helping you, my lord. Would you mind if I came with you? Naruto asked warily. He didn't think that Balius would leave him hanging, but there was a slim possibility that the horse would run free. Which was understandable, being cooped up in a small stable had to suck. There was a reason the sea was open and spacious. The sea cannot be contained. Percy and Poseidon grinned. I loathe that saying, Zeus said, rubbing his eyes. Balius perked up and stamped his hooves excitedly. You wish to accompany me? My lord, I might be honored. Naruto let his shoulders slump and went to grab a saddle from the rack. Balius, please, stop calling me that. I cannot, my lord. Wait, not that saddle. There was a rather rude young man that rode with that saddle. I can't allow you to use that one. Balius snorted. It's beneath you. He's one of those types, the uber-ass kissers. Ares blanched. He hated those types. Naruto rolled his eyes and went to grab another saddle. Not that one either, my lord. A pregnant woman's water broke on that one. Nothing wrong with that. Artemis frowned. Yeah, there is. Apollo wrinkled his nose. God of medicine he may be, but that was still gross. Quote. Okay, EU. Naruto moved down the line to another worn and torn saddle. Milord, as a son of Neptune, you should not be forced to use a lowly saddle such as that. Oh, for the love of Caesar, what saddle should I use then, Balius? Naruto rounded on the horse with a look of annoyance on his face. Balius scanned the rack for several minutes before he snorted. None of these are good enough for you, milord. I can see him wearing glasses and acting like a secretary. Talia snorted in amusement. Little business cards too. Piper laughed in agreement. Oh, he could have a suit. Hazel giggled at the mental image with a clap. Of course not. Naruto rubbed his temples with his hands. That so figured. Again, there were a lot of things he loved about being the son of Neptune, but at the moment, talking to horses was not one of them. Milord, if I could make a suggestion. Balius looked at him with respect and his head low. I know it's not my place, but might I suggest you ride without a saddle? Just until we can find Zanthus and a chariot. When we return to your camp, the finest of leathers could be used to make your saddle. I do not see that happening. Reina frowned. She felt sorry for Naruto at the prejudice he had to endure. Naruto rolled his eyes. The day he got a regal saddle from any of Vulcan's children or legacies would be the day that he got promoted to centurion. It wasn't going to happen anytime soon. But, he didn't want to risk angering the horse, so Naruto just nodded. Alright, sure. It's worth humoring them, Percy nodded. Yet you always have a stash of donuts for blackjack. Annabeth pointed out while turning a page. It's just in case. Percy explained. Blackjack may be his friend, but he also had wings while Percy did not. Balius' eyes gleamed excitedly and he ducked his head down. Thank you, milord. Don't mention it, Balius, Naruto said as he walked back to the pen. So, how exactly are you trapped here? Balius turned away, slightly ashamed. The rafters are too low for me to jump the gate, and before we were left here, Lord Neptune had ordered us into hiding from the Romans, so we could not show excessive strength or power. That was several centuries ago, around the time that silly mortal war was going on. The courteous war. The chivalry war. Blasted memory. Yes, couldn't let Greek horses fall into Roman hands. Poseidon nodded. More insult to injury. Athena agreed regrettably. Apologies for the language, milord. This will nag at me until I get it right. Hey, don't worry about it, Naruto said. He lifted the lock on the pen that was just out of Balius' reach. The door swung open and Balius exited the pen with a grateful sigh. So if you were in hiding, how did Zanthus escape? Balius snorted as Naruto tried to get a good grip to mount the horse without hurting him. The lucky fool's pen was left open one night. He just ran. Didn't even bother to say goodbye or offer to let me out. Ungrateful. And after all that time I took returning him to a somewhat respectable intellect, too. Poseidon shifted a bit. He still felt a bit guilty for striking the horse dumb, but it did go against Hera's orders. Respectable what? Naruto asked with a frown, his hand on the top of Balius' shoulder to act as a grip. Balius turned his head and bit onto the back of Naruto's shirt. With a mighty lift, the son of Neptune found himself moved to Balius' back. Whoa, warn someone next time, will you? Sorry, milord. Balius apologized. He trotted to the door while Naruto adjusted himself on his back. But I had to restore Xanthus' mind. Before Achilles' demise, Zanthus was granted a boon by Juno, to speak to unworthy mortals. She just wanted to tattle on me, Apollo pouted as Hera sniffed at him. You were interfering where you need not have. And yet look at the both of you back in the hot spot. Hades pointed out dryly. This goes against divine law, and Zanthus spoke to Achilles. Lord Neptune punished him by striking him dumb. Thankfully, I discovered the punishment wasn't meant to be permanent. Yeah, he whopped him with his trident. Ares snickered. I did not. Poseidon protested sternly. He merely touched the horse. Oh, gotcha. Naruto nodded. He grabbed a portion of Balius' mane to steady himself and blinked in surprise. It was soft, softer than anything he'd ever felt before. He'd heard that horse manes were coarse like hay, but this felt more like fur than hair. Now, hold tightly, milord. I can smell Xanthus nearby. Fool must have gotten lost several times in these woods. Balius warned before he galloped. Naruto felt himself fly back from the force, but tightening his grip reassured him that he wouldn't be thrown off the divine horse. He heard Misaki and Zack call out to him, but didn't dare risk looking back. Naruto was sure if he did, his head would snap off. Balius' hooves sounded like Jupiter's thunder as they struck the ground. He must have big hooves. Nico said. And you know what they say about big hooves. Leo snickered. Quote. Dang it, Leo. Piper glowered. Ha, you thought about it. Not surprising. Hephaestus snorted. The divine horse was also quick to warn Naruto to duck, lest he got injured by a branch or something. So, how far do you think he is? Naruto asked. 2 minutes and at least 20 miles since they left the stables. Just over this hill, my lord. Balius returned as they came across a rather large hill. They passed over the hill and Balius slowed to a stop. Naruto lurched forward and grunted as his chest slammed into Balius' neck. Ow. Why'd you stop? Naruto asked as he sat up and rubbed his chest. Zanthus has been captured. Balius' words made Naruto look ahead to see a dark chestnut-coated stallion with a splash of white across its back. The horse's mane was the stark opposite of Balius, a dark shade that matched the night sky. The captured horse was stuck in a cage to the side of a small camp where 3 shirtless men sat. Only these men lacked heads. So they're dead? Percy asked. Not exactly, Jason frowned. I think I know what the foe is. Blemier. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the sight of the man-eating monsters. They weren't the most dangerous monsters to encounter, but they were still dangerous. Even if they were a head shorter than most men, literally. That's like one of those football guys who paint their stomachs. Talia frowned. Ew, they're usually chunky so it's super gross. Aphrodite gagged. I can hear them from here, my lord. They plan to eat Zanthus. How barbaric. Balius snorted and stomped his hoof. Over my hung hide. Horse meat is terrible, gets between your teeth and it's stringy. Ares grunted. Gross. Percy turned a bit green at that remark while Poseidon threw a dirty glare the war god's way. Wait, hold on, Naruto said, keeping the stallion from charging in with a small tug. He scanned the camp for any signs of others or traps. He scowled when he saw a Blemier pick up something originally out of sight. They have guns. Seriously. We so need to start arming ourselves. Percy frowned. Soon it's going to laser warfare. Light sabers. Leo beamed, he was so on it. Pluto's pauldrons. My lord, we must do something, Balius implored as he shifted uneasily on the hill. I know, give me a second to think. Naruto furrowed his brows together as he watched the Blemier lean back to laugh. Without heads, they couldn't easily turn to find something, so he and Balius could try to sneak in and rescue Zanthus. However, the 3 monsters were seated rather strategically, not one on a single log, nor blocking another's view. How could something without a brain be so smart? Balius let out a soft whinny. My lord, Zanthus has spotted me. Okay, good. That's something, right? Naruto asked as he watched Zanthus start to move around. Not good. He's not that smart, my lord. He'll reveal us to them if we don't do something soon, Balius snorted worriedly. So we got a smart one and a Percy one. Got it. Really? Percy asked Talia. I think it's funny, the hunter shrugged. Damn. Naruto grimaced. He released his hold on Balius' mane and swung his leg over to the side in preparation to dismount. Alright, here's the plan. I'm going to go down there and get Zanthus. You stay here and keep an eye out. What? My lord, you can't be serious. Balius gave him a disapproving look. He was born serious. Hermes declared. You're going to have to trust me. Naruto dropped as quietly as he could from the large stallion and crouched down low. The son of Neptune carefully made his way down the hill, trying not to draw attention to himself. Fortuna was on his side, as he made it to the edge of the Blemier's camp without issue. Naruto kept low, dropping to military crawl on his stomach just a bit further into the camp. Some of the demigods began humming the Mission Impossible theme. This allowed him to hear what they were saying. Hungry, Lash. When are we gonna eat the pony? One Blemier asked. Another, Lash, turned his torso halfway to look at Zanthus. Soon, Strill. We gotta let him starve a bit more. Tender that way. Hopefully better than those people we had the other day, the last Blemier, whose back was to Naruto, said. He pulled out a rag from his pocket and coughed into it. The rag was then tossed over his shoulder and landed in front of the blonde. It was a torn and bloody child's t-shirt, a girl's, with a white unicorn on the front. My little pony, my little pony. Ares. Artemis thundered at the war god, who laughed. Easy lil sis. Ah. My eye. Apollo held his face where he was hit. I need that to ogle people with. Don't you mean shoot arrows? That, too. Naruto closed his eyes and counted down from 10 before he resumed crawling. He had to get just a bit closer to Zanthus. As he crawled along the ground, his eyes locked with Zanthus, who looked ready to release a loud joyful neigh. Naruto lifted a finger to his lips and held it there for a good long while until he was sure that the stallion wouldn't make a sound. Just mentally tell him to shut his muzzle. Percy reasoned. Come on, I'm so hungry, Lash. Just a leg? Strill asked, making Naruto pause as he heard a log shift. No, Strill. We gotta wait a couple more days. Then the horse will be dead on its feet and none of the meat will be ruined, Lash said. He growled at the whimpering Strill. Unlike last time. I was so hungry. I know the feeling, Frank agreed while rubbing his stomach. Lash is right, shut up Strill. I'm still spitting out shotgun pellets. Naruto was now torn between being grateful for the Blemier's culinary tastes and furious with himself for letting these monsters live for so long. We should really patrol outside the city at times. Reina stated with a frown. It was their jobs to destroy these vile creatures after all and defend mankind. Agreed. Frank nodded. Another break to calm himself and Naruto looked up at Zanthus when he whinnied. Oh, shut up. The nameless Blemier shouted. He apparently missed Naruto or didn't bother to turn, because he resumed complaining to Lash about the shotgun pellets in his last meal. Naruto really had to give a heap of thanks to Fortuna when he got back to Camp Jupiter. And make sure Zack gets a big commendation from Edward to the Praetors. He's like a lucky rabbit's foot. Talia snickered. So do you have to rub him on you or something? Leo asked, which earned him a glare from Talia for that remark. Another glance at the distance between himself and Zanthus' cage made Naruto decide he was close enough. The son of Neptune put his hands on the ground and closed his eyes to concentrate. The ground was a lot more firm here, but sure enough Naruto felt the tingle in his head. His arms shook lightly and then the ground trembled. That's handy, but I'm more a hurricane guy, Percy commented. A good thing too, who knows what you'd break if you could do that on command. Nico retorted. It's a very dangerous power, Hazel agreed. Zanthus and Balius neighed loudly in protest while the three Blemier were tossed to the shaking ground. Naruto furrowed his brow and felt sweat bead up on his forehead. He needed to make the quake larger and last longer. Earthquake. One of the Blemier cried out. The sea god is angry. Yes, quake with fear. You stole that from the Ronin warriors. Apollo told Poseidon, getting the god to falter with an embarrassed look on his face. It's a good quote. No he's not. It's a demigod. Naruto felt the eyes of the monsters land on him and decided that the time for stealth had thankfully left. Naruto pushed himself up from the trembling ground and ran to the cage that held a disheveled stallion. Zanthus, when I get this open, you run. Naruto ordered firmly. Zanthus nodded, understanding, and watched as the blonde took hold of the iron cage's front. As the tremor died down, Naruto heard the iron groan in protest of his actions. When it was over, Naruto felt portions of the cage give way. By the time the Blemier had readied their guns, Naruto had ripped off the side of the cage. Like it was one ply. Piper commented with amusement. And moved so that Zanthus could flee. No. My dinner. Strill cried out in anguish. We'll just have demigod tonight, boys, Lash said as he lifted the rifle up to his left eye. Before he could fire, Naruto turned and tossed the cage at him, making him cry out before he was trapped beneath the metal. You guys should have gotten takeout. Ah, lame. Leo said with a thumbs down. I liked it. Hazel frowned, it was very fitting. Please, I could have done so much better. Like, you should have gone to Applebee's, or, I came to deliver a pizza, with a topping of pain. Stop talking, Leo. Jason sighed. Naruto said as he slammed his fists together and made his gauntlets appear. Strill and the other Blemier lifted their guns and fired at him. Naruto dropped to his knee and slammed his left fist into the dirt, causing another, larger and more violent tremor. The unnamed Blemier let out a yell as he fell to the ground, but Strill managed to keep his feet. I'm gonna pump you full of lead, grind you up, and make soup out of you. Strill declared as he primed his shotgun. A loud whinny made him turn towards a charging stallion that ran him down, knocking the gun from his hand in the process. Now that was a takedown. Hermes whistled. It was super effective. Apollo gasped, getting a few laughs from the demigods. The son of Neptune rose from the ground and rushed at the Blemier he had dropped. A hard kick knocked the rifle from his hand. He twisted his torso to face Naruto, dark eyes narrowed in hate and a scowl over his stomach. Infuriated sea-green eyes matched the distaste the monster showed and a gauntlet-covered fist was quickly plunged through the gap in the monster's eyes. Naruto's hand shot through the back of the Blemier. A strange pink organ that looked like a cross between a heart and a brain was in his grasp. A2 for one sale. Ares chuckled. Not funny, Aphrodite huffed at him. She thought it was disgusting. Naruto pulled his arm out and crushed the abomination in his hand, black liquid spraying over his face and the Blemier's body. Tong! The trapped lash cried out. Damn you, boy! I'll kill you. I'll eat you. You will not harm my lord. An angry neigh made the monster look up as a heavy golden horseshoe came crashing down onto the headless man's face. Balius snorted angrily as Lash and Tong turned to dust, leaving behind small leather pendants with faces engraved on them. That's an interesting spoil. Percy commented. Maybe for offerings, but I don't see why though. Annabeth said. Lash. Tong. Strill wailed as he got to his feet. A chestnut-coated stallion bucked back and kicked him hard, making him fly towards Naruto. Die. Naruto yelled as he drove his right fist into Strill's face. The force of his punch made the top half of the Blemier's chest rip off of the rest of the body. Man, he just ripped them apart. Nico commented and remembered how scary super strength could be. As Naruto wiped the black gunk off of his face, he watched the Blemier turn to dust, another pendant dropped with another face carved into the leather. Naruto looked up as Zanthus came over to him and inspected the blonde closely. Naruto arched a brow and was caught completely off guard as the stallion suddenly dragged its tongue up the side of his face. He shuddered at the feeling, he didn't even know horses could do that. Of course they can, Percy grimaced while he rubbed his cheek. Blackjack did that to him a few times when he got jelly-filled donuts. Thank you. Zanthus' voice sounded younger than Balius, but it was deeper. His eyes were also a bit duller than his brother's, but still stood out compared to a regular horse's. Naruto dragged his arm over his face with a grimace. Don't mention it. Zanthus, that's no way to speak to our lord's son. Balius chided his brother. Zanthus turned to him with a disinterested glance and then snorted. Balius' head shot back and he let out an affronted whinny. Who are you calling stuffy? I'm acting properly, you simple-minded fool. He's the son of Neptune. They got a cute little yin-yang thing going on. Hazel giggled at the sight. Balius turned to Naruto with an apologetic look in his eyes. Forgive Xanthus' manners, my lord. I'll try to get him to speak to you with the proper respect you deserve. Xanthus snorted again and dipped his head down to pick up one of the pendants the Blemier had left behind. The stallion offered it to Naruto, who took it carefully from the horse's mouth. Naruto looked the pendant over before he frowned. What sort of reward is a leather pendant with a face on it? Percy nodded. Right. Quite hideous aren't they? No magic either. Perhaps they are meant to be offerings, my lord. Balius suggested as he picked up the other two pendants. Naruto nodded silently in agreement before he pocketed the three pendants. He could worry about them later. First things first, though. So, Xanthus, how do you feel about helping me on a quest? He's gorgeous. Misaki cried as she wrapped her arms around Balius' neck and rubbed her cheek against his muzzle. Girls love the ponies. Hazel nodded sagely. Of course they do. Percy grinned. Poseidon was looking quite smug at the moment. Naruto returned, this time on Xanthus' back much to Balius' protest, to his friends outside of the stables rather quickly. Xanthus might be slower than Balius mentally, but the two were tied when it came to speed. However, once they came to a stop and the two demigods realized they weren't under attack, the daughter of Venus took one glance at Balius and began to smother him with affection. Who's a pretty pony? You are, yes you are. Yes he is. Hazel nodded, can I get a quest to find them? I think Arian would be jealous. Frank dryly said. But they're so pretty. Balius' eyes shifted over to Xanthus, whose tail swished in what appeared to be amusement, and narrowed. Silence, you buffoon. Balius looked pleadingly at the son of Neptune. My lord, please tell her to stop rubbing against my face. It's unsettling. Misaki, let go of Balius. Naruto sighed as he dismounted Xanthus. He shook his head as she whined at him. Please. Only because you asked so nicely, Misaki said with a pout as she released the stallion's neck. But later, Piper snickered. She was glad she wasn't super girly like that and had a horsey phase. Balius shook his head and glared at Xanthus, who nickered once more. I am not a softie. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? You were there when I trampled the Trojans beneath my hooves. Ah, trampling, Ares sighed out. We never get to do that anymore. With good reason. It's barbaric. Athena told him. Bah. Rules today are too uptight. Apologies, my lord. Balius ducked his head down towards Naruto. Don't worry about it, Naruto said as he rubbed Balius' muzzle. He looked at Zack, who just walked out of the stables with a saddle slung over his shoulder and another in his hand. Zanthus, seeing the saddles, reared back and neighed in protest, freezing the son of Fortuna in his place. Naruto held his hands up to the large stallion. Whoa, easy, Zanthus. Easy. Zanthus, control yourself. We are in the presence of Lord Neptune's son. Balius neighed at his brother. Zanthus settled back on the ground, his dull dark eyes locked warily on Zack. Quote. So, I take it he doesn't want a saddle on his back? Zack asked after a moment. Looks like they'll have to go bareback, Percy said. His words made many of the gods and all of his friends laugh at him, Leo, Apollo and Hermes especially, much to his confusion. What did I say? Oh, Percy. Annabeth sighed. She loved him to bits, but he could be a bit slow on the up and up. Thankfully, Hazel seemed just as lost as he did. Naruto snorted as he gently brushed his hand down Xanthus' muzzle to soothe him. Yeah, something like that. Nor will I. Both of these saddles are highly unsuitable for a son of Lord Neptune, not to mention extremely uncomfortable. Balius huffed. Milord, Xanthus and I are much more accustomed to chariots. Well, have you seen one anywhere? Naruto asked. Seen what? Misaki asked, giving Naruto a small pout. Clearly she was still a bit upset at not being able to pet Balius. I would be, too. Hazel nodded in clear agreement. A chariot, Naruto said. The two Romans looked at him confused. Naruto shrugged as he gave Xanthus a light pat on the shoulder and gave Balius, who stood taller, a small smile. These guys are Achilles' chariot-pulling horses, the golden stallion is Balius. Balius took a step back to bow, which made Misaki giggle and clap in approval. Such a regal pony, Talia snickered. He has a way with words, or nays in this case. Reina smiled lightly. Naruto rubbed Xanthus' shoulder. And this excitable lug is Zanthus. Wow, two divine horses that obey Neptune, what are the odds of that? Zack asked with a chuckle. He dropped the saddles in his hands to the ground and rubbed his chin. We could go back to the ranger station and ask if they have a chariot. Because that'll go over real well. Hermes rolled his eyes. Naruto shifted uncomfortably. We didn't exactly leave with a good impression on them, even if they were legionnaires. I wouldn't be surprised if Joan didn't want anything to do with the Legion, Misaki said with a frown. Zack scratched the side of his head. Well, then maybe we don't ask. I like the way this kid thinks, the god of thieves smiled. That does mean he's going to rob your kids. Apollo innocently pointed out. Dick, I can't believe we stole this piece of crap. There was a nicer one right next to it. Zack groaned as Naruto steered the chariot away from the ranger station. He looked down at the rickety wheel that was latched onto the side next to him. One good bump looked like it could knock the whole axle off. Wow, this reminds me of Cabin 12's chariot, Percy said. Hey, the god of travelers glared at the boy for that remark. Even if it was true. I'm with Zachary on this one, Naruto, Misaki said with a grunt as she hung onto Naruto's arm. She was trying not to get hooked by the nail that stuck out from the edge of the chariot. Yes, clearly for that reason. Artemis rolled her eyes. Such a smart girl. Aphrodite nodded, approving of the action. It was old and the paint was faded. The bronze on it looked like it was ready to give out at any time. By the time you saw the other one, I had already hooked Xanthus up. Naruto rolled his eyes at their whining. And they weren't the only ones doing that. Oh, I've shamed Lord Neptune. Shamed him. Balius wailed as he galloped next to his brother. Naruto groaned and Xanthus snorted as the golden stallion continued to moan. Not only making his son steal from fellow Romans, but also use a chariot below his worth. I should be punished severely. Well, he is the son of a wind god. Poseidon chuckled. What's that supposed to mean? Zeus glared. He's melodramatic like the sky. Ha. Funny coming from the moody sea. Now you two, no fighting. Hestia chided them softly, which made her brothers stop. Ayup. Xanthus agreed with mirth in his voice. Balius sent a glare to his brother, looking back ahead at the road when Naruto pulled on his rein slightly. Oh, you shut up. This is mostly your fault. Being so fussy when Zachary wanted to hitch a ride. You should be grateful that Milord was so generous to give you the chance. Balius, focus on the road. Naruto sighed. Xanthus may not be the brightest of divine equine, but he sure knew how to rile up his brother. Naruto looked over at Zack. You've got the map, lead the way Zack. Zack looked up at the sky. Fortuna, if you can hear me, please don't let this wreck in the making fall apart on us. That a tall order I think. Hephaestus grunted. He pulled the map out of his back pocket and looked at it. We need to take a left in a mile if we want to get to Columbia River. Is there a bridge we can take to Lois Island? Naruto asked. Zack groaned as he looked at the map. No. They all let out grunts as the chariot hit a pit. Immortals. Watch where you're driving, Naruto. I don't have my license yet. Percy cried out with a laugh. Neither do I, and I can drive better. Talia scoffed. Like you drove the sun. I can drive a real car. Not a flying ball of gas. Apollo gave Artemis, who was grinning, a dirty look. That is so low. You didn't deny that it was the truth. I am, you focus on giving directions. Naruto returned with a glare. He turned to the two stallions in front of him. Guys, can you pick up the pace a little bit? Xanthus leaned forward slightly, forcing Balius to do the same. Yup. Yes, m'lord. Many apologies for the bump, m'lord. Xanthus, watch the road. If the chariot falls apart on Lord Naruto, then I will blame you for it. Balius barked at his brother. He whinnied when Zanthus flicked his tail to slap his flank. You uncouth, intolerable, buffoon. That was highly uncalled for. He just got pony slapped, the stain on his honor. Oh, the horror, Nico said dryly. Actually, that is highly offensive for horses. Poseidon explained. Funny. Xanthus retorted simply, making Naruto chuckle. He tightened his grip on the reins and pulled back on Balius to keep him from taking his eyes off the road. The odd curses that escaped Balius' mouth made Naruto remember that the horses were originally Greek. He was a bit disappointed that he couldn't understand everything the twin stallions could say. Must be all Greek to him. Jason smirked and got some laughs. Oh sure, if he said something like that. Percy brooded. Xanthus suddenly smacked Balius' flank again with his tail. Children. Yes, you're right, Xanthus. I apologize for my words, m'lord. I'm nothing like Mars stallions. Balius sounded ashamed of himself. It's okay, Balius. Not like I understood it anyway, Naruto mumbled in a bit of disappointment. He shook himself out of it and cracked the reins. Come on, guys. Show me why Neptune gave you to Achilles. He had a dagger to find. That he does. Who's next? The blonde daughter of wisdom asked. I'll take it, Reina said. Reina cleared her throat and turned the page. The road to the coast of the Columbia River was not generous to the chariot. Naruto paid it no heed, but the constant swears from Zack started to grate on his nerves. The way Misaki pressed herself against him throughout the trip didn't help either. It made some weird feelings appear, and frankly, had Naruto not been very distracted by the task at hand, he would have been asking Zack about them. Daddy, what's an erection? Apollo asked in a high voice. Apollo. Artemis glared as most of the guys snickered at the joke. Zeus glared at Apollo, for the sun god was facing his way. What was really annoying was that Apollo really had asked that question a long time ago. After, of course, he made the son of Fortuna shut up. There it is, m'lord. Balius' voice snapped Naruto out his thoughts. The two stallions started to slow as their hoofs left dirt and touched down onto the sand. The air was cold, but the sounds of the crashing waves were oddly soothing. Finally, Zack leapt from the chariot and fell to the ground on his knees. He lifted his arms up and crowed to the sky. Sweet relief. Oh, Fortuna, thank you. Thank you, kind gods. You're welcome, the gods answered back. Drama queen. Zanthus snorted as he tested the sand with his hoof. Troy. Yes, Zanthus. Much like the beaches of Troy, Balius nodded to his brother. He looked around. Far less debauchery and war going on, though. Woo. Ares cheered. Good times. Apollo nodded in agreement. Naruto let the reins fall and Misaki continued to hold onto his arm after they got off of the chariot. Naruto gave her a bewildered look. Misaki. You can let go of my arm now. Must I? Misaki asked with a small frown. I say let her snuggle more. Aphrodite protested. Yes, let the quest go on longer, by all means. Artemis rolled her eyes. Yeah, it's starting to feel really weird. Naruto partially admitted. His arm was feeling numb around where Misaki was hugging it, and that weird tingling had started to come back. Misaki almost reluctantly let go of his arm and took a step or two away. Content. Naruto turned and looked at Zack. Hey, knock it off. Where's Lois Island? Zack huffed and got to his feet. He dusted the sand off of his jeans. Yeah, sure. How are you not rattled by the chariot of damnation? He's got no idea how wrong he is. Percy chuckled. Big time, Annabeth said with a grimace. How rude. Balius neighed in offense. It may not have been the proper form of transport for m'lord, but we traveled smoothly. That, and m'lord has the same skill Patroclus did. Who? Leo asked with a confused look. Achilles' friend. Annabeth told him. His really good friend. Aphrodite giggled. That's just a rumor that Apollo and the Trojans started, Hermes said. But it's so juicy. Natural. Zanthus nodded in agreement. Thanks guys, Naruto said with a smile. He turned to Zack. So where is it? There. Zack pointed to the left, across the moving water to the fog-covered land in the distance. The beaches were barely visible, and the trees that adorned the land mass were just as difficult to make out. Naruto looked back at Zack, who was looking at his map. Maybe 5-10 miles to the island. How are we supposed to get there? Misaki asked. She walked closer to the edge of the beach and peered out with her hand covering her eyes from the slowly rising sun. There's no natural land bridge, and if we did need to find a boat, it would set us back a few hours. Not to mention that'd mean we'd have to ride that thing again. Zack glared at the chariot. Misaki shivered. Yeah, that's not happening. They looked to Naruto, who looked between them. Misaki gave him a sweet smile that was slowly growing. That's a scary smile. Jason shivered and looked at Piper. Please don't ever do that. I'll try, Piper said with a small growing smile. Please. While Zack smirked. What? Well, it is a large body of water and you're a son of Neptune. Zack chuckled. Get to work, that's an order. Leo barked out. Naruto looked at him for a moment before it clicked. What, you want me to swim? I've never swam that far. And, I'm an earthshaker. I'm not good with the whole water thing. Oh, that's just embarrassing. Percy palmed his face while everyone laughed. He didn't just say that. Poseidon grimaced. He rubbed his temples. Does the baby water brat need some water wings? Ares asked snidely. No, but you will in a minute. Poseidon growled while he glared heatedly at the war god. Misaki walked over to him oddly, her hips swished from one side to the other. The advance had Naruto on the retreat until he nearly fell over, but by then Misaki had closed a significant amount of distance between them. She put a finger on his chest and gave him a sweet smile, the stars in her eyes sparkled oddly. Her finger began to make circles slowly. And she's 12, right? Frank asked cautiously. My baby's got the moves. The love goddess tittered. Moves like Jagger, Apollo sang out. Naruto. Her smile became far too sweet. Naruto felt a sudden rush of fear go through him, like when he'd stepped on an active landmine in a war game when he was 7. Misaki's hand gripped the front of his shirt and she pulled him closer. Either you start swimming, or we see how well you do at digging your way under the water. Evil Annabeth. Stop that, Leo. The blonde glowered at the chuckling son of fire. Nope. She's got him whipped like you do your water boy. Percy pouted. He wasn't whipped, right? Quote. Right, yeah, swimming. I'm gonna go swimming. Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Naruto nodded frantically, which made Misaki's smile become a normal form of sweet. Misaki released his shirt and patted him with both hands on the shoulders. Good boy. Now, take this off. Misaki started to tug at his Camp Jupiter shirt. Why? Naruto asked. So she can get in your pants, Hermes pointed out. Far too soon. She just wants to see the candy under the wrapper. Aphrodite huffed. Her girls weren't that forward. Mostly. There were those rare few. Misaki gave him a look. So you don't get hypothermia by wearing all those clothes. But I can will myself dry. Naruto frowned in confusion. That was a well-known power of his. Zack chuckled. He's got a point, Misaki. Misaki's cheeks puffed up as she pouted. You're not helping, Zachary. Yes, he is not. The love goddess frowned. He should watch himself. Hey, he's an honorary legacy. Leave him be. Hermes frowned. You're holding him back, princess, Zack said with a knowing look. His eye looked over at Naruto. Go on, water boy. Get started on swimming. Misaki continued to pout as Naruto slipped away from her and quickly trudged over to the edge of the water. He waded into the Columbia River, willing it from not dousing him, until he was waist-deep in it. Then, Naruto dove, propelling himself through the water faster than he had ever moved on land. He couldn't feel it, but at the same time he knew the water was cold. Instinctually, most likely. On the bright side, that weird feeling Misaki had made start to churn around in his gut had finally went away as he imagined how cold it was. A cold shower will do that to you. Jason chuckled. Speaking from experience, Jason. Piper asked slyly. Number. Good, because I so don't want to hear about that. Talia grunted. Many fish had come near him, brushing alongside him with ease. Naruto was pleasantly surprised when he realized that fish brains were too small for coherent thought. Animals of instinct, it seemed. It says a lot about their creator. Athena couldn't resist the dig to her rival. Says the bird brain. Poseidon shot back, earning a frown from the goddess. That train of thought made Naruto remember that somewhere there was a monster under these waters. A monster that had killed a Roman. It made him pause and suspend himself in the ocean, looking around for any sight of the Cetus. That made another thought come to the forethought of Naruto's mind. What exactly did the Cetus look like? They tend to come in many different shapes and sizes, Poseidon confessed. Naruto shook his head. He didn't have time to worry about it. He didn't even need to worry about the Cetus. All he needed to do was get Cybele's dagger and go back to Camp Jupiter. A fetch quest is never that easy, Percy said. I had experience with that. Big time. Still got detoured in Vegas. Ares snickered. And whooped your butt. You wanna try again? Anytime. No. Poseidon and Zeus barked. The whiskered son of Neptune went back to swimming, his goal firmly in his mind. The bottom of the river started to rise closer and Naruto swam up. He broke the surface easily and took in a soft breath of the fresh air that surrounded him. Naruto noted that the beach was nice and clean, and the fog that surrounded the beach added to the ambiance. There was a faint yell and Naruto turned around to see who he assumed to be Misaki waving her arms wildly. Sharks in the water. Leo cried out. That's such an overreaction. Poseidon frowned. Do you know how many sharks were killed because of that movie? A lot. Leo ventured. Poseidon nodded. A lot. Jaws was awesome. Ares grinned. Naruto lifted one arm to wave back and then walked up onto the beach, completely dry. If I were a dagger, where would I be? Naruto asked himself. With no real leads, Naruto resigned himself to wander along the beach. The waves crashed again nearby and the son of Neptune let out a small groan as his hands slipped into his pockets. This is going to take forever. It's been hours, Misaki said with a small pout as she sat on the beach, her shoes and socks set in the abomination that was called a chariot while the waves crashed over her feet. She crossed her arms over her knees and rested her chin on them. And I didn't get to see him wet. That's what she said. Leo, Piper, Talia, and Artemis glared at the snickering Latino. Good response time. Ares praised with a nod. How old are you again? Zack asked as he looked up from cleaning his crossbow. Old enough. Misaki smiled lightly. She suddenly giggled. Besides, Venus has been sending me signs, confirming some questions I have. Do I like boys? Check. Aphrodite smiled brightly. She sighed. Oh, this is going to be a beautiful match. Signs. I don't think I want to know, Zack said as he looked back at his crossbow. Zanthus whinnied and he glanced over at the two stallions, who he had long since released from the chariot. The chestnut-colored stallion did not like him, and frankly, the feeling was mutual. Misaki played with a lock of her hair, her golden starry eyes staring off into the distance. Do you think it's a Neptune thing? The stupidity. Yes. Athena nodded, getting a glower from Poseidon. Zack dropped his crossbow slightly and looked up dryly. Seriously. Do I want to know what you're talking about? The obliviousness, Misaki said with a roll of her eyes. Mind in the gutter much. Well, he is a teenage guy. Talia rolled her eyes. I'm 17. I'm supposed to be thinking about these things. Zack retorted swiftly. See. Talia scoffed. Guys are so predictable. Tell me about it. Annabeth sighed and gave the sheepish Percy an amused look. You're, what? 12. 12 and 8 months, actually, Misaki said haughtily. Zack rolled his eye and she turned to look at him. But seriously, do you think it's from Neptune? You're going to ask me that while we're sitting on a beach next to two divine horses. Zack arched a brow, his lone eye asking her silently if she was sane. Misaki nodded nonchalantly. Yes. Now answer the girl's question. Aphrodite demanded eagerly. Just checking. Zack sighed. Honestly. No. It's just him. He chuckled and went back to cleaning his crossbow. You've got your work cut out for you. Especially if you want to monopolize him. Word's been spreading around the older legionnaires, some other girls are starting to notice Naruto, you know, since he's been training 24/7 after the thing with the quake. Girls like muscles. Frank smirked and winked at Hazel, who gave a flushing smile. Misaki sighed irritably and looked back out to the water. I was afraid you'd say that. She pursed her lips together and frowned at the thought of some of the other girls trying to sink their claws into Naruto. That just wouldn't do, she had seen him first. She'd made her claim known, but apparently not as well as she'd thought. A calculative gleam appeared in her eye and a wry smile spread across her face. She had a few ideas on how to deal with this revelation. Evil. Annabeth. I will kill you, Leo. You will not see it coming. This I swear. Those thoughts left her as Naruto walked up the beach a ways down, but to her disappointment he was completely dry. Misaki pouted slightly and got to her feet as he walked back over to them. He gave them one of his large carefree grins that stretched up to his sea green eyes, making them twinkle beautifully, and reached behind him. Is that what you see, Annie? Talia smirked, getting a small flush from her friend. None of your business. The response made Talia chuckle in amusement. So guess what I found stuck in a stone not too far from the beach? Naruto asked as he brought his arm forward. In his grasp was a Pugio, a dagger, with a highly decorated sheath. Rubies, diamonds and gold decorated the black leather. It was about 10 inches long, perhaps 1¼ or 1½ inches wide. Naruto carefully unsheathed the Pugio, revealing a bronze dagger with Latin inscribed on the hilt. The Romans looked at it in awe, but Leo popped their bubble. Did he just say he pulled it from a stone? The mechanic asked. Oh, man, Percy said with a grimace. This isn't going to end well. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Nico deadpanned. For the loyalty and bravery displayed in the face of death, I bequeath this dagger to Gaius Marcus Scaevola, Zack read softly, translating as he did. He held his hand out. May I? Here, Naruto said as he handed the Pugio over gently. As Zack inspected the dagger, Naruto shifted uncomfortably. I found the, last owner. Misaki put a hand on his arm in support. Are you okay? Yeah. I buried him and put some gold down for the passage. Asked Pluto to forgive him for the late arrival. Naruto swallowed. The ground rumbled after I took the dagger, so I think he heard me. Wasn't me, Hades said with a quirked lip. Zack looked up. The ground rumbled after you picked the dagger up. Yeah. Can we go now? Zack sheathed the dagger and handed it back to Naruto. As Naruto bound the dagger to his belt, urgency reflected in Zack's eye and he took a calm breath. Yes. Leaving now would be for the best. The ground rumbled again and about a mile off the coast, the water began to bubble. He pulled an Indiana Jones. Leo shook his head. Should have done the swap. With what? A stick. Annabeth scoffed. The chances of him finding the right dimensions were about as high as Harrison Ford's quick swap working in the first place. Yeah, but, that was great suspense. Leo protested. Whatever. The three legionnaires turned and took notice of a large mass of dark scales that started to break the surface. I have a bad feeling about that. Zack swallowed. Obviously. Reina rolled her eyes before she continued on. Misaki shook her head. That doesn't look like a whale. There she blows. The white whale. I wonder if there really is a white whale. Percy mumbled. Poseidon chuckled. Perhaps. We need to hook Balius and Zanthus back up. Now, Naruto said. Zack and Misaki nodded in agreement before the three of them ran over to the divine stallions. My lord, did you accomplish your mission? Balius asked with a smile in his eyes. Naruto grabbed the harness of the chariot and tossed it over Balius' back. Yeah, we got Scaevola's dagger, but we need to go. Are you all right, my lord? No, we're about to have a big boss battle. Apollo wailed. But we don't have health potions. Hermes gasped. No. Apollo wailed. My loot. All my glorious, glorious loot. Oh, grow up. Artemis snapped at them for their immaturity. The two gods just laughed. Balius, look over there and tell me what you see. Naruto said, pointing at the dark scales slowly getting closer. Balius followed his finger and whinnied. My word. Yes, post-haste we shall leave. Zanthus, stop fussing with Sir Zachary and allow him to hook you up. Lord Naruto is in danger. Oh, Jupiter's beard, don't call me, Lord. Naruto groaned as he tightened the harness around Balius. He looked at the still slightly fussing Zanthus and frowned at him. Zanthus. Behave. The horse snorted in distaste as Zack put the harness on him. Zack grimaced in return. You know, this isn't exactly my choice of arrangement either. Oh, boys. Boys. Misaki called as she ran back from putting her shoes and socks back on. It's getting closer. Ares started to hum the Jaws theme, and soon, everyone was joining in except for a brooding Poseidon. Stupid Spielberg. The sea god huffed. Zanthus looked beyond the girl and at the massive scales in the distance. He reared back and whinnied in fear, making Zack back away. I didn't do anything, he said. Cetus. Naruto winced at the volume Zanthus yelled at. Dumb and quiet's got a set of lungs. Nico whistled. He nodded at Zack to finish up Balius while he calmed the younger stallion. He snorted and shifted uneasily in the sand, making it difficult for Naruto to put the harness on. Easy, easy buddy. Just let me get this on so we can go, Naruto softly. Naruto. It's almost on the beach. Misaki cried in worry. I know. Zack suddenly ran away from the golden stallion and pulled his crossbow from his back. He looked over his shoulder as he primed a bolt tipped with imperial gold. Get them hooked up, I'll try to buy us some time. Don't be a hero. Leo cried out. You don't have the extra life hack. You shouldn't have had that stupid hack. Hades grumbled. Don't do anything stupid. Naruto shouted back as he tightened the harness around Zanthus. Misaki, fix Balius' harness. It's too loose. Yeah, how do I do that? Misaki asked sheepishly. What? The Romans asked flatly while Reina paused to rub her head. Percy even went as far as to palm himself in the face. That was basic training. Frank groaned. So embarrassing. Hazel groaned. Naruto looked at her over Xanthus' back with disbelief on his face. How? It's required by all cohorts to learn how to hook up a chariot for the annual races. Misaki giggled weakly. About that, I might have skipped out. Come again. Reina frowned at the words on the page. How'd she manage that? Seriously. Naruto asked flatly. The stables were smelly. I agree. Aphrodite nodded sagely. And now it bites her in the rear, Athena scathingly noted. Quote. Drat. Frankly, milord, you can't blame a child of Venus for wanting to be clean. Why? I remember Julius absolutely refusing to go anywhere near the stables, preferring to be on polishing duty as punishment. Balius defended the girl. Julius was such a good boy, Aphrodite smiled fondly. Shame about how it all fell apart for him. Dionysus chuckled. Balius, do you want us to die? What? No. Never, milord. Then shut up. Yeah, shut up, Mr. Ed. Don't be mean to the horses. Hazel glared at Nico. Nico held his hands up defensively. Okay. Relax, I was just making a joke. Outdated one, but gosh darn it does that makes sense. Leo chuckled. Zing. Talia smirked. Balius hung his head slightly. Sorry, milord. Naruto shook his head and finished adjusting Xanthus' harness. He went over to Balius, giving Misaki a small frown that made her cringe, and then fixed Balius' harness. Double drat. Aphrodite clicked her tongue. That made my baby lose some points. At the sound of a loud roar and an explosion of water being parted. Naruto turned around to call Zack back. He looked just in time to see a massive four-fingered, clawed and scaled hand slam down near the son of Fortuna. Naruto followed the arm up, and up to the top of the scaled head that was easily 70 feet off the ground. It looked like a horribly evil monkey, with fins on either side of its head. The eyes were white, without pupils, and its mouth was contorted in a snarl that revealed layers of sharp yellow teeth. Four massive, scaled arms sprouted from its torso and a powerful build led down to a large serpent-like body that disappeared into the water. The underside of its arms and clawed hands were suckled, like an octopus tentacles. He's got to fight that. Piper asked with a dropped jaw. I could take it. Percy huffed with a determined frown. Sure you could. Annabeth teased. What? It's in water. Unlike Naruto, that's my turf. It was truly a terrifying creature. More like Fu Ugly. Leo grimaced. Go. Zack cried out as he loaded another bolt and took a shot that made the Cetus bellow. He dove away from another fist that would easily crush him. He primed another bolt and fired, striking the Cetus in the cheek. Run. Go. I'll catch up. I can guess where this was going. Nico frowned. And it wasn't going to be good. We should listen to him, milord. Balius flinched as two hard sea-green eyes turned to him. The rage that swirled in those eyes made the immortal stallion shudder. This was certainly a son of the sea god. We all go home or nobody goes home, Naruto said firmly, quoting one of his favorite movies shown to him by his mother. SGT. Slaughter was so awesome. Sir, yes sir. Apollo saluted eagerly along with Ares. Ah Slaughter. I love that son of a bitch, the war god grinned. His act during the Gulf. The best. Ares, watch your language, Hestia frowned. Almost as cool as Optimus Prime. Almost. Prime for the win. Jason nodded in agreement. He looked around in confusion. What? He's awesome. Naruto brought his fists together and let the gauntlets appear. He turned to Misaki. Get ready to leave once we come back. Misaki nodded, muted by the determination that came off of Naruto in waves. Convinced that she would listen to his orders, Naruto turned and ran towards Zack. He wouldn't lose anyone on this quest. Not Misaki, not Zack, not Balius and not Zanthus. They had the dagger, they could go back to camp and reap the spoils. Fame and fortune. Apollo cheered. And a celebration feast. Reyna added. That means a party. Dionysus perked up. No. Zeus drawled. Bacchus isn't punished. Is he? Naruto pumped his arms and legs harder, trying to run faster as he watched Zack get cornered by the Cetus, hands. The sky started to darken overhead. Zack kept his crossbow aimed at the monster, bolts fired as fast as he could load them. The time to prepare the shot sucks. Ares pointed out. Should just use a traditional bow, Artemis said with a huff. Bah, just stab the stupid thing. Ares huffed. The Cetus bellowed and brought its upper arms up, the hands clenched tightly into fists. They came down in almost slow motion, and Zack never let up on his defense. Naruto felt and heard himself cry out Zack's name. It was weird, watching someone he could call his older brother die. Naruto didn't take in every detail of the scene, but at the same time it was like he saw every moment. Like it was a frame-by-frame showing of Zack's body being engulfed by the Cetus, fists. All the demigods looked down. This was the risk of being one of them, they were all aware of it. Though, it still hurt to see it. Naruto felt a burning anger, a fury, build up inside him as the Cetus, hands lifted and turned to him. The Cetus roared at him. Naruto roared back. Yeah, that berserker button just flipped. Leo winced. The sky responded with a loud boom as rain began to fall. Zeus frowned. I didn't do that. Perhaps his atmokinesis kicked in with his anger. Poseidon piped up innocently. That better be the case, the lightning god said sternly. The son of Neptune ran at the monster, rage and bloodlust in his eyes. He was going to make it suffer. Punish it. Make the Cetus wish it hadn't been born. These thoughts shot through his mind at a rapid speed, but overall each outcome of the plans that passed by were the same. Naruto was going to kill the Cetus. All rationality out the window, yes. Ares grinned, finally. Naruto was numb to his actions, and what happened next went by in a blur. He vaguely remembered suddenly being off the ground and rapidly approaching the Cetus with his fist brought back. Either he or the Cetus roared, or maybe both did, but Naruto remembered that his fist collided with a massive canine, easily twice his size. The Cetus, head reared back and the tooth fell to the ground, Naruto not far behind it. I'm here to remove your cavities, of doom. Leo, enough, Piper said. Leo slouched. Yeah, hard to be funny here. Sorry. It's okay. He recalled a small jolt of pain that went through his legs, and the slight sting in his eyes from the cloud of sand his landing made. Naruto remembered being on the move. He avoided strikes and delivered his own to the Cetus, hands, breaking them when their fists collided. The Cetus healed remarkably fast, most likely due to the element they shared in common, and grew angrier with each miss. Naruto didn't really care how mad he made the monster. It wouldn't measure up to what Naruto felt. It was beyond rage, an indescribable fury. Naruto remembered the burning of his blood, the intensity of the waves seemed to respond to it. He had tunnel vision and at the end of the tunnel were two things, the Cetus, dead on its back, and himself, standing tall in the cause of the former's position. Oh come on, tell us in details. Ares whined. He killed it, that's all. Poseidon told him. Boring. The only thing Naruto remembered clearly were the moments that lead up to the end of the fight. The Cetus had tried to corner him like it had Zack, but Naruto refused to let that happen. He forced the Cetus to back off, to the point it had to fall to its arms in an effort to support itself. The son of Neptune grabbed the fallen canine he had knocked out of the Cetus, mouth and picked it up over his head. The tooth was thrown and embedded itself in the right eye. That's what I'm talking about. Ares cheered. Brutal, but effective. Frank nodded in agreement. While the Cetus tried to cover it and support itself off the beach, Naruto didn't relent. He pried a hand away and began to hammer away at the tooth with his fists, driving it further and further into the skull. By the time Naruto realized the Cetus had already disintegrated, he had pounded the canine tooth deep into the ground, to the point he couldn't pull it out if he tried. Revenge is blind brings a whole new meaning, Talia said. Tell that to Nemesis. Percy told her, remembering Ethan. It was around this time that Naruto came out of his rage-induced fight, and the rain began to stop. Droplets continued to fall even after the rainfall ended. It was at that moment Naruto realized he was crying. Naruto stayed on his knees, his fists pressed against the sand. He ducked his head down as he let it all sink in. He found Sivala's dagger. He just killed the Cetus. He let Zack die. That's horrible, Hazel said in a quiet voice. Everything was going so well, and poof. A life lost. Naruto took in a shuddering breath as he came to terms with all of it, well, mostly the last one. Zack was dead. The first of the cohort to show unwavering support, the first friend he made outside of Jason. Jason. How would he react? Zack was as much Jason's brother as he was Naruto's. Jason would blame him for what happened. Naruto didn't doubt it for a second. I wouldn't. Jason said firmly. He was a touch sad that he and Naruto were still quarreling in this other dimension. After all, he was too slow to get Zack out. They had plenty of time and the Cetus moved slower on land than in the water. Naruto. Naruto stiffened at Misaki's shaken voice. The gentle touch that landed on his shoulder made him flinch. Another hand made him turn to look at her. Oh, Naruto. Zack's dead. It was the only thing that Naruto could think of to say. The next thing he knew, Misaki's arms were around him and his were back around hers. Zack's dead, and it's all my fault. No. Misaki pushed him away, giving him a glare that was trying to be intimidating, but the effect was lost with the tears in her eyes. No. Naruto, what that thing did to Zack, it was not your fault. No charm speak needed on that one, Piper said. Blaming himself wouldn't accomplish anything. But nothing. Misaki's hands cupped his face. Zack died doing what we have been trained to do, fight to protect our people. Romans and mortals alike. He died protecting us. He died like a true Roman. Indeed he did. Reina nodded. While tragic, this is what we train for. Still sucks, Percy frowned. It always does. Right. Naruto swallowed and nodded. Right. He died like a true Roman. Misaki nodded with him. Zack was a hero of Camp Jupiter. Naruto continued to nod and Misaki stopped him, making him look at her. Say it. Zack W was a hero of Camp Jupiter. Misaki gave him a stern look. Zack's death was not your fault. I must say, she's being quite level-headed, Athena said hesitantly. Why thank you. Aphrodite beamed. Zack's death was not my fault. Naruto repeated. As the words left his lips, he knew he didn't feel like they were honest. Oh, they are. It's just the unbelievable levels of guilt in him that's preventing him from believing in them. Apollo pointed out. Naruto, Misaki said softly. Naruto, this is going to be very hard, but we need to get Zack on the chariot. Bury him at home. Naruto nodded in agreement. He pulled away from Misaki and rubbed the back of his gauntlet over his eyes. He nodded and said, we're going to take Zack home and give him a proper burial. Right, that's right. Misaki smiled softly. She sniffed and dabbed at her eyes. Okay, let's get Zack and we can go home. Home is where the heart is. Hestia smiled. You've been waiting for that one, haven't you, sister? Hera asked with amusement. Hestia smiled shyly. Naruto looked over at the chariot, still attached to the two stallions. He's not going to fit on that. The two had to turn at the sound of sand rapidly shifting and the feeling at a small tremor. Where the top of the Cetus tooth once was, there was now a glimmering white pearl on the end of a sword hilt, with the blade impaled in the sand. At the base where the hilt met the blade was an engraved trident. The hilt was a bright gold, a dark leather wrapped around it for the grip. That's one hell of a ba. Ares smiled. Ba? Athena asked him. Big ass sword, Hephaestus said while he examined the weapon. Duh. Ares drawled and crossed his arms. How'd the cripple know that, but you didn't? I thought you were smart. Athena glared heatedly at him. Pretty good looking sword. Hephaestus rumbled softly. He rubbed his chin. Looks familiar. And Arthurian. Hephaestus. Hera gave her son a look and the smith grunted. All the while, Annabeth's eyes narrowed. Well, I guess that would be for me. Naruto said, his voice tight. He got up off of his knees and went over to the sword. Naruto grabbed the hilt with both hands and pulled it slowly from the ground. The blade was nearly a foot longer than he was tall, and Naruto was grateful his gauntlets hadn't been willed away yet. The side of the golden blade was reflective and pristine, about a foot and a half wide. Hey look, it's Cloud Strife. Apollo happily pointed out. For Gaia. Leo cried out. The demigods and Olympians gave him dry looks. I mean, the life stream. Much better, Apollo said with a smirk. Nice save. Enough with the references. Artemis rubbed her eyes. They're giving me a headache. Ouch, way to Eris it, Arte. It's beautiful, Misaki said softly. It's Zack's. Naruto stabbed the sword partially into the sand. He didn't look at it, couldn't. I don't know how well I would have done against the Cetus in a real fight. I don't remember it. But, I know that I couldn't have won today, without Zack. Naruto rested his hand on the hilt. This will be hung within the 5th cohort. The sword hung in memory, forever gleaming its light upon those gaze upon it by a hero's sacrifice. That was beautiful, Jason. Piper whispered. Jason gave her a small smile. Thanks, Piper. That thing is massive. How are we going to get it and Zack back to Camp Jupiter on that rickety old chariot? Masaki asked. I can't hold onto it and Zack. Milord. Naruto looked over at Balius as he and Zanthus approached. I know it isn't my place, but, perhaps we could ask Lord Neptune for some assistance. Of course. Poseidon perked up. I would help, and I know Neptune would. Naruto frowned. Neptune wasn't exactly at the top of the list of his favorite people at the moment. Sure, he got a very beautiful, and massive, sword for killing the Cetus, a monster that Neptune had sent after a city. However, that monster just killed his older brother figure, so, the reward was rather moot. What did he say? Masaki asked, getting to her feet and putting her hand on his arm. He wants me to ask Neptune for help. That's, actually a very good idea. Naruto turned to her and she gave him a small frown. Neptune was one of the 2 creators of the chariot, and we shouldn't exactly try to ask the other for help. Really a smart girl, Athena said. Aphrodite smirked haughtily. Naruto agreed with that. The last thing Minerva would want would be to be asked for help by a Roman son of Neptune. He was certain that his request would not only be rebuffed, but most likely end with his own death. So, what do you think? The river is freshwater, Neptune's lord of the sea. Naruto pointed out. The Columbia River exits out into the Pacific, Masaki said. She shrugged. Hierarchy goes a long way. I've got a lot of connections. Poseidon nodded. 70% of the world to be exact. And you say I'm prideful. Athena rolled her eyes. I've got the sky, Zeus lorded the fact with a smirk. And I've lordship over the dead. Yes, Zeus, continue to tell us what we don't know. Hades rolled his eyes, gaining a glare from his brat of a brother. Bribe. Naruto looked at Zanthus. Balius nodded. Yes. Well, I would call it more of an offering myself. But you could offer something up to one of the river gods, my lord. That would help with getting the message to Lord Neptune. The sword. Not the sword. Naruto flexed his jaw and nearly glanced over at where Zack was. They hadn't even checked his body yet. He could have been clinging to life, but they left him to die. No, he's gone. Nico said firmly. You'd have to be extremely lucky to survive that. That blow destroyed whatever organs you had. Death would be a mercy at that point. Stop it. Masaki frowned at him. Stop feeling guilty. It was kind of hard to stop feeling guilty when you were the reason someone died. Naruto decided to humor Masaki and focused on the task at hand. He needed to give a sacrifice to the Columbia River god to get a message to Neptune, and he probably should give something to Neptune as well. Maybe even something more to butter him up. 3 sacrifices. Naruto dug around in his pocket and pulled out the pendants he received from the Blemier. I don't know, Poseidon said uncertainly. I might. But Neptune. Those are pretty flimsy for a sacrifice. Masaki stared at them oddly. When did you get those? Masaki asked. She pulled one from his hand and looked it over. When I was rescuing Zanthus. Naruto looked to the stallion, who had the decency to appear slightly bashful at being captured by the headless monsters. They're just some pendants. We can't give those to someone under Lord Neptune. Even if it came from his son, it would be a slap to the face of that god. Balius neighed, affronted. Naruto agreed with the horse, but this was all he had. No. Naruto, these are cases. Masaki reached into her purse and retrieved her dagger, a brilliant gold Pugio that was shorter than Sibylla's by 3 inches and thinner by 1. She turned the pendant upside down and slid the tip of her Pugio across the seam, opening the pouch. Her thin fingers slipped into the small pendant and pulled out a small gem that reflected light perfectly, looking just like the sea. Masaki's eyes sparkled. It's an aquamarine crystal. Naruto, do you know how rare this is in the United States? These are usually exported from Brazil. Hot damn. Leo whistled with raised brows. Where do I find those face-body guys? They spawn randomly, Talia said. Gosh darn it. Leo. Hazel whined. He loved making fun of her and she was getting sick of it. Quote. That makes a much better offering than I thought. Masaki looked torn. Do we have to offer it? Get your priorities straight. Reina groaned. Naruto gave her a look. Masaki. We have to get Zack home. Misaki looked at the crystal in her hand with a whimper before she held it out and looked away. If we must. For Zachary. Naruto took the stone and cut the other two cases open. Two more equally beautiful crystals slipped into his hand and Misaki let out another whimper. Must be a Venus thing. No, it's a girl thing, Aphrodite corrected. To Naruto, these were just pretty stones. And if they helped him, all the better. Naruto walked into the water and looked at the gems in his hand. He couldn't exactly just throw them and say, "Hey Neptune. Give me a ride home." Yeah, getting on the wrong side with his sire wasn't on his things-to-do list today. Instead, Naruto knelt down and let his hand disappear under the water. Naruto felt bad that he didn't know the name of the god in control of the Columbia River, so he faltered for a moment. Hi, Mr. God or Goddess of the Columbia River, can you, send a message to Neptune? One of these stones are for you and the others are for him. At least he can be polite. Dionysus sniffed, looking at Percy as he said it. The boy just rolled his eyes at the wine god. A crystal shone brightly before it vanished, which made Naruto blink. Oh, thanks. Tell Neptune that. Naruto Uzumaki, his son, needs a way to return his friend's bee body to Camp Jupiter. Naruto paused for a moment before he lowered his voice. And tell him that I have a lot of other questions for him, that I'll ask at camp. Which will hopefully be answered. Poseidon muttered. He felt sorry for his son. The water passed calmly around him, crashing lightly on the beach. He waited for a moment before the aquamarine crystals vanished. Misaki let out a sharp gasp shortly afterward and Naruto turned to see the chariot glowing. When the glow dissipated, a beautiful chariot that was gold and had aquamarine details had replaced it. The proud trident decorated the front, and images of running stallions and flying eagles were engraved on the side. Hooked at the back of the chariot by a sturdy chain was a low wagon with 4 wheels, a purple bed with a cloth that was large enough to be wrapped around a body. That's adequate, Athena said tersely. What? Are you blind? That's beautiful. Hephaestus corrected her with a snort. His compliment got a light glare from both the wise goddess and the Lady of Doves. Why thank you, Poseidon said with a smirk. All compliments to your Cyclops, Poseidon. Quote. Fair enough. Poseidon sighed. Naruto looked back to the water just in time to see a small ripple appear in the distance. He could have sworn that he saw a guy with green skin and black hair for a second. No matter. Grabbing the broadsword, Naruto went to the wagon, set the sword within, and grabbed the purple cloth. He and Misaki went to Zack's body, both of them paused at the sight. Zack wasn't flattened, per se, but it was obvious that he did not survive the attack from the Cetus. If he had, it would have been a cruel death. The son of Fortuna had several bones jutted out of his skin, and a shallow crater surrounded his body. His one eye was open, blood trailed from the side down his cheek like a red tear. It was heartbreaking. All the demigods gained solemn looks. Each wondered if that could be one of them someday. With a determined swallow, Naruto knelt at Zack's side and prepared the cloth. Then, with the assistance of his control over the earth, Naruto moved Zack to rest atop the cloth. Misaki helped Naruto bind the body and the both of them carried him over to the wagon, resting him on the padded bed, concealing the sword from view. The two stared at the wrapped body for another moment before they went to the chariot and climbed aboard. Naruto grabbed the reins and took one last look at the water, his sea-green eyes narrowed, before he cracked the reins. Balius and Zanthus neighed and they moved. The quest for Sivala's dagger was completed, it was time to go home. The aftermath shall be interesting. Reina commented, holding the book up. Any takers? I'll have a go, Frank said with a smile while he took the book. Clearing his throat, Frank turned to the next chapter. Left swipe. Edward repeated Rachel's order as he looked over the field his cohort had occupied for weapons drills. The cohorts had been practicing for almost 45 minutes now, and they were going to break before they got to spars. A 13-year-old Jason Grace swung Julius in gladius form at the wooden post that would act as his foe while he kept his footing despite the weight his armor put on him and the shield that threw him off balance. Jason pursed his lips, he never was a fan of using the standard shield. Down. Jason quickly followed through with a simple downward slash to the right. The wood gave way to his golden blade's edge and left a deep slash in the post. Thrust. Jason brought Julius back and drove it forward, piercing the post with ease. Such penetration prowess. Aphrodite. Hera glared at the goddess. Jason shifted uncomfortably from the comment. Oh, come, Hera. I'm merely making a note of it for my daughter, Aphrodite tittered. Piper went to open her mouth, but simply hung her head. Her mom was never going to stop with innuendos. So what was the point? Good job, guys. Break for 15. Mild relieved cheers came from the other members of the cohort and Edward smiled. He groaned and pinched the bridge of his nose with his false arm as he caught sight of something. Ah. Grace, help the Probatio. To Jason's left, the newest Probatio, Dakota, tried to pry his gladius from the post. Frank chuckled after reading that line. Wow, seeing a rookie Dakota. Hazel giggled, her smile wide. I wonder if he was the sugar-happy guy he was back then. You have no idea. Jason told her bluntly. Jason scowled lightly. He thought the son of Bacchus was a spaz and needed a few more days with Lupa to get his Kool-Aid addiction taken care of. Dionysus turned his eye to Jason. You believe he was what now? Honestly, sir, he wasn't the best example of a Probatio to come from Bacchus. Jason told the god, swallowing when the god's eyes filled with madness. Ah. Well. Just checking. The wine god shrugged, throwing Jason for a loop. The blonde had thought he was going to get vaporized there for a second. Julius reverted to coin form and Jason walked over to the younger boy. He arched his brow when Dakota put both feet on either side of the sword and pulled. Probatio, what are you doing? Jason asked. Dakota stopped his strained pulls and looked at the slightly older boy. He laughed sheepishly. Twisted it too hard before the thrust. It's stuck. Thought I'd use all my might to get it. Jason let out a sigh. Get down. You're a Probatio of Rome, not a kindergartner on a monkey bar. Yes, sir. Dakota released the handle of his gladius and fell to his back with a grunt. Truly, the intelligence of Rome is shown through its brood. Athena smirked. She ignored the other Olympians, dour glares for the indirect insult. Dionysus in particular was particularly venomous. Really? Reyna groaned into the palm of her hand. Just letting go without even putting your feet on the ground. Talk about embarrassing. Annabeth winced sympathetically. He hopped back up to his feet and rubbed the back of his head. Sorry, sir. Jason shook his head slightly and took hold of the handle. A simple tug failed to bring the gladius out and Jason tried once more with more effort. He scowled slightly and grabbed the handle with both hands. This pull once again failed to free the sword from its entrapment. Having problems with the hard one, Grace? Someone asked behind him. A snicker went through the cohort. Shut up, Gregory. It's not his fault the probie got the sword stuck. Jason ignored the ribbing that came from his fellow members of the fifth. He readjusted his grip on the handle and tugged again. Still no progress. Why the heck wasn't this thing budging? Need a hand, Jay. And here comes the strong man to save the day. Percy grinned at Jason, who huffed. He could get it out just fine. The post might have ended up as splinters, though. Jason looked at the speaker and gave the green-eyed blonde a small scowl while the rest of the cohort went quiet. Thought you were sparring with Tim. Naruto shrugged. He dislocated his shoulder, told me to come back and join for spars. He looked at the gladius and a small smile appeared on his face. So, need a hand, son of Rome. Jason frowned lightly at his pack brother as he reluctantly let go of the gladius. As expected, Naruto needed more than one hand to remove the gladius, or a fist to be more precise. However, the post would have to be replaced. Jason shook his head as the top of the post landed somewhere in the fields of Mars, over 5 miles from where they were. Did it hit anyone? Ares asked. Quickly, Frank read ahead a bit, before he shook his head. No, it doesn't. TCH. Lame. Was that necessary, Uzumaki? The other centurion of the fifth, Michelle, asked as she walked over with a frown on her face. Naruto looked at her from the corner of his eye and grunted as his smile fell. Jason frowned as his brother-in-all but blood's voice became tight. No, ma'am. It had been 3 months since Naruto had returned from the quest for Sivala's dagger. The dagger was rewarded to Naruto for his success, but it was a bittersweet reward. The broadsword that had been rewarded upon the defeat of the Cetus was hung in the 5th cohort, over the bunk that Zack once called his own. Shortly after the sword was hung, Naruto dismantled the bunk and, with the blessing of Edward and Michelle, left the space bare in memory. There had been whispers of treachery for a moment, but Jason didn't know the details over what or why. He knew that it all started at the 1st cohort, but had been silenced by the Senate and praetors. Naruto seemed to pay it no mind as he slowly became distant from the cohort. He didn't smile or laugh as much as he used to and ate his meals alone. Jason caught him once or twice making his way towards Temple Hill, but never found time to speak with his friend. Talia gave her brother a look. What? No way you were that busy, Jason. Hey, unlike camp, there's a lot of stuff to do in New Rome. Jason frowned at her. You still could talk to your friend. Jason just grunted, like he needed social interaction lessons from the former pine tree. When Jason awoke the day after Naruto left, Edward informed him out of goodwill that he was being considered for Centurion status, as Edward and Michelle had announced they would be retiring from the Legion within the year. Well, that's blatant favoritism. Poseidon deadpanned. Your boy is hot-headed. And when you take into account your reputation with the Romans, of course they wouldn't consider him. Zeus refuted. Still seems like biased favoritism. I made praetor. Percy pressed his thumb to his chest. Only after you retrieved the eagle and helped save New Rome. Reyna told the son of Poseidon. She crossed her arms. Naruto has only performed one quest and lost a member of his quest team in the process. Add in the farce of a trial for the earthquake in Frisco, he honestly doesn't have much of a chance to become a centurion. Percy pouted at this revelation. Not cool. Very not cool. Jason nodded in agreement. Jason had been leveled with training of his own, pulled to assist with cohort reports and being taught duties by the two centurions. It was the first time in a while he'd managed to say something other than, hello, to his pack brother. The last time they had a longer conversation was on Jason's 13th birthday, but even then it was mostly about a gift from some girl in the first cohort. Naruto playfully insisted that the girl liked him, and it drove Jason crazy whenever someone commented on the gift that Naruto would reply, it's from his girlfriend. Piper raised an eyebrow at Jason. Nothing happened. He said quickly. The daughter of Aphrodite just hummed dismissively, which did nothing but worry her boyfriend. Jason had buried the golden bracelet he'd gotten deep into his trunk. You'll be getting the replacement post then. Michelle asked Naruto. Naruto's jaw flexed and his eyes seemed to flare before he nodded. Yes ma'am. Dismissed, Legionnaire. Michelle waited until Naruto turned and walked away before she looked at Jason. Grace, Rachel wants to speak with you privately. Leave your shield. Jason inwardly grimaced while he outwardly nodded. He was going to miss the spars again to be assessed in strategic warfare. He didn't mind the planning, but he really missed being able to train with his cohort outside of a war game. You'll be getting the replacement post then. Why not just spit out what's on your mind, Michelle? Naruto muttered to himself as he walked over to the 5th cohort's training shed. Naruto went over to the training posts and grabbed one, easily hoisted onto his shoulder with not but a scowl on Naruto's face, though not due to the weight. He thought about the past 3 months and glowered as he carried the post back to the field. He had heard the whispers, the absolutely stupid theories that he had done something to Zack. A handful of people had asked him personally what had happened, but when the first whispers had emerged, Naruto was pulled back to the Senate. The accusations were made clear to the centurions, senators and praetors by Joshua, the centurion of the first cohort. Once again, this is why I love Camp Half-Blood. There's no pointless politics. Percy groaned as he clapped a hand over his eyes. This is so cruel. You'd think they would be mourning the loss of one of their own instead of pointing fingers. You get used to it. Reyna shrugged. Frank groaned as he turned the page. I'm going to hate it. There, big guy. Leo patted his shoulder, almost condescendingly. I could always bombard the camp if it bothers you too much. That's not funny. What? Too soon. Once again, Misaki had pulled his ass out of the fire, as Tim described it. Her report along with his own had managed to sway the Senate from expulsion. However, seeds of doubt and distrust had been planted in the centurions, despite the ruling. The only ones aside from Misaki, Abigail and Edward that seemed to still trust him were Rachel and Tim. Rachel softly reconfirmed her faith in him after she and Abigail shared a soft conversation with one another. She would give him the occasional pat on the head or smile whenever they crossed paths. It depended on the situation and who was near them, but Naruto was grateful all the same. Mostly it was the new almost apprenticeship that Naruto gained with Tim. The son of Mars was a great help when it came to coming to terms with Zack's death. Tim had pulled Naruto aside after a brutal spar they shared where Tim taunted and mocked Zack's past in war games. Listen, death's not easy for anyone to deal with, and it's only harder when you're the one that's leading the troops. I'm going to pretend I didn't see any tears because this was the first time someone died under your command. Next time, though, you'd better not let me catch you crying because someone gave their life for you, for Rome. You're only dishonoring them by doing so, and I'll kill you if I ever catch you dishonoring one of my soldiers. Harsh, Ares grinned. That's my boy. Frank rolled his eyes. Naruto took his words to heart and continued to meet up for spars with the praetor. Where Zack was the caretaking and mischievous older brother, Tim had taken it upon himself to become the stern hand that kept Naruto in line. It was a good month that they had, beating each other black and blue with their fists and reviewing old personal thoughts of generals long dead. Naruto had all but isolated himself from his cohort and had planned to reintegrate 2 months after the trial, but then he lost someone else close to him. On one of his trips to get some help with his regular schoolwork, Naruto found Abigail in the chambers of the augur with an obsidian dagger in her back and blood pooled around her body. Oh hell no. Apollo shouted, slamming the bottom of his fists on his armrests. Who the hell would? The sun god paused. Damn, even to his own family. Leo whistled. I'm glad that punk is dead. Nico sniffed, power-grubbing loser. Same, Apollo groaned into his hands. Damn that brat Octavian. To think I even favored him for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, no. I said seconds. 5 seconds I mean, my Roman side favored him. Apollo quickly nodded, a forced megawatt smile on his face. I see, Zeus stroked his beard. Then waved his hand. Carry on, Frank Jong. Naruto rushed to her side and checked her pulse, but found none. With little idea of what to do, and greatly distressed, Naruto ran to the praetors. The discovery of Abigail's assassination was kept very quiet, as the praetors did not want to risk a third Senate meeting nor did they want to distress the rest of the campers. In the end, centurions were informed, of course, and a new augur was announced, with Abigail's absence being reported as a solitary decision to go on a trip back to Rome. A week later, a false report of an accident overseas was written up and delivered to the family. Naruto thought that it was a bit cruel, to lie to a lover of Apollo, the god of truths. It is. Apollo sighed, knuckles cracking as he balled his hand into a fist. Hermes gave his brother a worried look before looking at Artemis. She had the same minute look of concern on her face. Rachel carefully tried to explain the politics, but Tim's blunt and simple explanation made more sense. It was necessary to keep the peace. Naruto still went to the temple of Apollo later that night and offered an apology to the god for the lie about his daughter's death. However, what bothered Naruto the most was that Octavian seemed to be more honored about his ascension to augurship than he was distressed about the assassination of the previous augur. The slimy legacy had hardly reacted when the Senate asked him his opinion on the death of his relative, relying on placing the blame on Neptune's dislike for Romans crossing the seas. Something about the pale blonde boy rubbed him the wrong way. He's my brother all right. Percy nodded. Percy, anyone with common sense would see that slimball being shifty. Jason dryly quipped. Exactly, sadly he was too in with the Senate by the time I became praetor. Reyna sighed dejectedly. I can't believe I'm being used as a scapegoat for this situation. Poseidon pursed his lips. No fun, is it? Hades smirked. It really isn't. Naruto. Edward's call snapped Naruto from his thoughts and found himself already in the process of replacing the post he was asked to swap out. He did autopilot real well, it seemed. Naruto put both of his hands on the top of the post and pushed it down into the earth until it was at the same height as the others. He turned to his centurion. Hey Edward. The one-armed centurion gave him a small frown. I called your name 5 times, kid. You were really zoned out. Lost in thought, Naruto said shortly. He didn't mean to, he just had a lot on his mind. Find who killed Abigail, beat them within an inch of their life, then volunteer to be the one that puts them to death. I doubt OCTY even did it himself, too gutless. Nico commented. He still planned it. Hazel told her brother. He'd deny it without a scrap of proof. Edward laughed. I noticed. Come on, Jason just got a quest and he wanted to see you. Naruto blinked and then nodded. Alright, sure. JJ, no offense, but you got a pretty dull quest, Misaki said to the taller boy. Naruto snorted and nodded in agreement while Jason rolled his eyes. Yuck it up, Shukuko. The son of Jupiter returned. I'm just glad I don't have to travel as far as you guys did. Naruto shrugged in return to this, which let Jason relax. He wasn't sure if the quest was still taboo to talk about or not. He smiled lightly as his pack brother spoke. Wasn't so bad. I got to meet Balius and Zanthus, not to mention help Zack slay the Cetus. Misaki smiled lightly at Naruto. I don't think Zack would mind if you took more credit than that, Superboy. Jason decided to test the waters a bit more. You know, I never got the full story about what happened. Naruto's jaw flexed again and he crossed his arms over his chest. Jason noted that nearby legionnaires had softened their conversation. Jason waited with bated breath to see if he had messed up. Talia turned to her foolish little brother. You done goofed. Who says that? Jason asked with bewilderment. Badasses. Apollo answered while wearing sunglasses. Yeah. Hermes sang out. Talia nodded while Artemis palmed her face. Jason was even more confused now. A small breath of relief Jason as Naruto relaxed and scratched the back of his head. I guess you deserve that much, since I doubt you'll get to fight a sea monster of your own when you're saving a kitten from a tree. It's a leopard. Jason firmly corrected the green-eyed blonde. Not that quest. The son of Jupiter bemoaned, resting his hand in his hands. Oh right, that one. Dionysus hummed, how did it go again? Jason glowered at the god, it was not just a leopard. The amused smirk on Naruto's face didn't falter and Jason scowled at him. Shut up and tell me the story, Naruto. That's a contradiction, JJ. Misaki giggled as the son of Jupiter failed to put a sentence together after she pointed that out. It didn't help that Naruto let out a few chuckles of his own. You two were made for each other. Jason crossed his arms over his chest and glared at the two. Naruto gave him an amused yet confused smile whereas Misaki all but beamed at the comment. She snuck a glance at Naruto and her cheeks darkened a bit. Surprisingly, Jason decided not to comment on it. Piper grinned, smart. Let the boy learn the hard way. Annabeth nudged Percy, did wonders for him. Ha ha. The son of Poseidon mock chuckled. Naruto shook his head and sighed. Alright, sorry Jay. You set yourself up for that, though. Yeah. Now come on and tell me about the Cetus. Okay, geez, so pushy. Naruto smiled lightly. So, we pulled up on the beach of the Columbia River. Naruto was glad to be on guard duty when he saw Jason stagger through the tunnel that led out of Camp Jupiter to the Californian highway. It was to be noted that his friend's weight supported by a girl with dark hair and tan skin. Naruto ordered Dakota, now a legionnaire, to run back inside and get the healers prepared while he rushed over to assist his pack brother. Jason had been gone for a year and his disappearance worried the Centurions, as well as the rest of the camp and Naruto himself. You chased a cat for a year? Percy asked Jason with disbelief. Well, things snowballed. The blonde claimed. How? Jason shrugged, demigod luck. Percy gave him a sympathetic look, I feel your pain. They were reassured only by vague messages that were poorly translated by Octavian that Jason was still alive. Despite whatever disputes or distance may have been between them, Naruto and Jason were pack brothers. They looked out for one another, always. Naruto caught the haggard son of Jupiter as he stumbled and nearly pulled the girl that helped him down with her. Jason, are you alright? I found him on the side of the road surrounded by hellhounds, the girl said. He never stopped fighting until they'd gone. He's very strong. What's this? Piper grinned towards Reina, who also smiled herself. Reina gave Percy a small look, who turned apologetic. Come on, I thought we were over this. Reina just hummed and turned back to listen, making Percy gulp. You ain't seen nothing yet. Naruto smirked at the girl before he pulled Jason over his shoulder in a makeshift fireman's carry. He turned to the new girl and scrutinized her for a minute. So, who are you? Reina Avila Ramirez Arellano, the girl, Reina, said. She held out a piece of paper to him. Naruto looked at the paper and then at the arm of his friend draped over his shoulder. He looked back at Reina, who flushed lightly and pulled her arm back. Hark, the sacred child has arrived. Piper. Reina nearly pouted at her friend's teasing. Right, sorry. Don't worry about it. Naruto shook his head. He adjusted his hold on Jason and turned towards camp. Come on, Probadio. The praetors are going to want to meet you and get answers. After he had been relieved of Jason, Naruto dropped off the new Probadio with the praetors and was ordered to go check on the son of Jupiter. It was an order that hadn't needed to be said, but Naruto was glad to have a good excuse to go into the camp's recovery room. Praetor's orders superseded the medics. You crazy bastard. Naruto mumbled as he stood at the foot of Jason's bed. Nar. Jason had bags under his eyes and looked like he hadn't slept well in days. Not to mention the cuts and tears that littered his form. A grin spread across Jason's face, his scarred lip turned up. I did it. Naruto arched a brow. Did what? Jason let out a tired chuckle. Killed a sea monster, and saved a cat from a tree. I'm winning. Ha. Zeus said smugly. Poseidon rolled his eyes. Please, Naruto will catch up easily. It's hard to trump beating the Trojan sea monster. And fetching one of Dionysus' cats. Father's not wrong. The wine god agreed. Naruto grinned back and put his hand on Jason's shoulder. Shut up and sleep, Jason. Brag tomorrow. Okay. Jason fell to sleep a few seconds later and Naruto shook his head. You missed my 13th birthday, you dick. Jason may have killed a sea monster and saved a god's cat, but he was wrong. He wasn't winning. Poseidon slowly grinned and Zeus frowned. What? After all, Naruto was the first of the two to get kissed on the lips by a girl. He wins by default. Leo chimed, turning to Jason, you lose dude. Jason clicked his tongue and pouted. He didn't get kissed until Piper. Percy was also pouting, his little brother got kissed before he did. Talk about a blow to his manly pride. Jason's recovery didn't take very long. He was back in the cohort within the next week, it would have been sooner, but he had to report to the praetors and the Senate about his absence. He recalled his stay with Aeolus the Lord of the Winds, an event that was caused by his need to recover from the first part of his quest. Apparently the jaguar was supersized to match that of an elephant. Ah, so it was Mr. McFluffums. Dionysus rubbed his bread with a nod. It's named what? Jason gaped at his godly brother. Mr. McFluffums. Honestly, John Green, clean out your ears. Snickers were heard from the demigods, Talia outright guffawing, and Jason hung his head. He nearly got eaten by a monster cat that was named Mr. McFluffums. Then came a fight with the Trojan sea monster. Naruto listened to Jason retell the fight against the Trojan sea monster while he hung out at the stables as punishment for pulling a small prank on the first cohort, namely Octavian. The son of Neptune put a toy snake in the legacy of Apollo's bunk and not cool. Apollo pursed his lips. Hermes snickering begged to differ, along with the rest of the demigods. While he was at it, put some special glue he learned from Boleus on the cohort's armor. That's a tiny bit morbid. Poseidon mumbled. It was a temporary substance that only activated when heated and made wet. The warm Californian weather worked in his favor. Quote. And then I zapped it with a lightning bolt. Jason finished, almost annoyed at the amused smile that found its way on Naruto's face. At the end of the fight, all I got from it was a tooth. I honestly don't know what to do with it. Offer it up to Jupiter or Mercury as thanks for the safe trip home. Naruto suggested as he pat Zanthus on the snout. The chestnut-coated stallion snorted lightly and dove into his meal while his twin shook his head. It would be nice. Zeus nodded. I got him the frequent flyer miles pops, it should go to me. Hermes interjected. Well, I think. And that of course is all that matters. Hades cut his brother off, just let the sticky fingers have it, Zeus. Thank you. Every dog needs a bone now and then. Hermes narrowed his eyes at the smirking lord of the dead, one to you, dear uncle. I try. Honestly, Zanthus, could you at least show some gratitude towards Lord Naruto? Boleus asked before he began to eat at a more proper pace. Zanthus rolled his eyes at the stuffy tone the elder stallion had, but gave a small nod to the green-eyed blonde nonetheless. Thanks. Don't mention it, Naruto said with a small smile. He noted that Jason was giving him an odd look. What? Jason shook his head. Nothing. I'm still not used to the way you converse with them, I guess. Oh, trust me, it gets really weird sometimes. Percy stated plainly. Some of the things Blackjack has told him, he could never repeat them aloud. I bet if you tried really hard, you could talk to an eagle. Naruto grinned. Might not be good for conversation, though. Bird brain and all. Very funny. Jason drawled while Zanthus snorted in amusement and Boleus gained an amused twinkle in his eye. The son of Jupiter leaned against the stable's wall, away from the horses, and grinned back. Still, I'm winning. Not even by a long shot. Naruto was quick to reply. He hefted the heavy bag of feed over his shoulder with ease and walked out of the stables with a wave to the occupants. The few stallions and pegasi that were in the stables bowed their heads, or in Zanthus' case, snorted out farewells of their own. Jason followed his fellow blonde and friend out of the stable with a frown on his face. What do you mean? I killed the Trojan sea monster and saved Bacchus' sacred animal from deranged hunters. The wine god looked at Artemis. I may be the goddess of the hunt, but I do not oversee all hunters in the world, Dionysus. A little heads up would have been nice. The mad god said snobbishly. Artemis rolled her eyes. I'll make a note. If you bothered to use that PDA I send you, you could. Hermes insisted. If I wish to use technology, I will Hermes. Talia made sure not to mention that Artemis only used it to play Tetris. Yeah, and props to you for a job well done. Naruto nodded as he walked to the shed that held supplies for the stables. He set the bag down and looked back at the confused son of Rome. But you're not winning. How? Jason asked with a frown. Naruto shut the doors to the shed and grinned at his friend. You missed my birthday. So, I apologized for that, didn't I? Jason asked. He looked a bit uncomfortable at the reminder. You did, and I sort of forgave you, but still. If you had been there, you would know why you're losing. Naruto returned cheekily. He patted Jason on the shoulder and chuckled at his dumbfounded face. I'm not going to tell you. It's way too fun to see you try to figure it out. Jason Grace, ace detective. Jason rubbed his chin. I like this. Yeah, well, Piper nudged him with a smirk. Save the sleuthing for the pros, Sparky. Jason glowered at him. If I don't know why I'm losing, how can I be losing in the first place? Dude, you're almost 14. You should be able to figure this out, Naruto said with his damnable grin still on his face. I'm going to go get some grub. Feel free to join me if you want, Jay. Naruto left Jason to ponder his words and instead made his way over to the mess hall. Jason, with little else to do, followed after him. He had a determined frown on his face. He was going to get to the bottom of this. After, of course, he watched Naruto inhale at least 1/5 of the day's rations in the mess hall. Like always, Jason couldn't hide the disgusted fascination at the bottomless pit that was his friend when he ate. Naruto even ate the mystery meat, which Jason was told by Edward had yet to be accurately labeled as any specific meat. We always called Poseidon the Iron Stomach for a reason. Demeter shivered in disgust at the memories. Poseidon brooded in her direction. You made me test the food that father swallowed. Well, someone had to. Hades smirked when he was subject to a glare. The perks of age, dear little brother. Hera snorted in amusement while Hestia looked apologetic. Quote. Nar, where does it go? Jason asked under his breath. Naruto, with a fork in his mouth, looked at Jason curiously. Where does what go? Quote. Never mind. Just, don't talk when you're chewing. I'll tell Rachel that you need another lesson in manners and etiquette. Naruto shivered at the thought and swallowed his food. Longest waste of time I've ever had to deal with. Don't make me do it again. Well, if you just told me why I was losing. Jason eyed the son of Neptune hopefully. Naruto smirked and stabbed another portion of the mystery meat with his fork. What? And spoil the fun? I think not. Jason narrowed his eyes. Were you always this cruel, or did I miss something? Naruto. Cruel. Ne sois pas bête. You were always the cruel one, Jason. There's my girl. Aphrodite beamed. My drama senses are tingling. Piper hummed. Annabeth looked at her friend. You have that. Sadly, yes. Jason, and many other boys, turned to look at the girl that spoke. Misaki had changed slightly in the year that had gone by while he was on his quests. Her face had narrowed and other noticeable growths were apparent on her chest. What? Jason had hormones and he was going to look even if he didn't want to. Hera frowned. You best not end up like your father, Jason. It's very unbecoming. What? Zeus cracked while Jason just mutely nodded. Piper just wondered what in the world Misaki did to get those. They were bigger than hers. And Piper was nearly 16. Hiya Misaki. Naruto greeted after he'd finished chewing, a grin on his face. Care to join us? Oh, well, if I must. The curly blonde with stars in her pupils turned and waved to a nearby table full of girls and a few boys from the second cohort. I'll be back in a bit. She has a clique, Piper groaned. Seems she's building quite the power base. Reina surmised with interest. Frank smiled. Maybe she'll beat down Octy in politics. A daughter of Aphrodite in politics. Athena said, tasting the words in her mouth and unsure how to react. Appeal is a very powerful tool for a politician. The love goddess smirked. Jason took note of the few nods given back to her before she sat down beside Naruto and across from himself. Misaki turned back to Jason and gave him that smile that always put him a bit on edge. It was like she was putting on a front. Welcome back, JJ. Well, it was a bit much to hope that name had died while he was gone. Shukuho. Jason nodded back. He looked to the table she'd waved at. Make some new friends. Misaki giggled and flipped her hair over her shoulder. Every girl needs an entourage, JJ. Are you ever going to stop calling me that? Jason groaned. Probably not, Misaki said, her smile plastered on her face. You'll always be the crude, rude little JJ from the fifth in my eyes. And you'll always be the girl that stalked my friend. Jason returned dryly. Misaki's smile widened. Stalking is such a crude term, JJ. I was merely indulging myself in an investigation. So she's the ace detective? Jason asked Piper. Shush JJ. Don't you start that, please. From the corner of a cohort. All investigations start somewhere. What are you guys talking about? Naruto asked with a pensive frown on his face. Nothing, Naruto. Misaki smiled at him and then pointed at the corner of her mouth. You've got something right here, Superboy. Naruto frowned and wiped away some residue from his meal with his thumb and looked at his empty plate. His eyes then traveled to Jason's plate. The son of Jupiter saw this and pulled his plate back, which earned him a whine from Naruto for his actions. Go get another helping, Nar. This is my food. Jason frowned at his friend. Naruto groaned and slumped forward. But I can't, the Predators put me at a limit to 10 trips. Jason took note of the stack beside his friend and wondered how he missed that being built. And I'm still hungry. You can have the rest of my food, Naruto. I had a small snack earlier that should keep me full. Misaki's offer, accompanied by a sweet smile, earned her a bright grin from the green-eyed boy. Misaki, you're the best. Yes, yes she is. Now kiss her. Again. Aphrodite smiled. You sound so sure it was your daughter. Poseidon said. Of course my baby would take the first kiss. It is only natural after all. My reality sensor tingling. Apollo muttered to himself. I try, Misaki said with a giggle as she pushed her plate over to him. She looked back at Jason while Naruto dug into his new plate. Jason shook his head and stabbed his fork into some of the roast that was served. He looked back up at the girl and hummed thoughtfully. So, any news of that probadio that helped me? Misaki's eyes glistened. Oh, is someone interested in the pretty girl that saved him from the mean old hellhounds? Yua, Jason said as Piper raised a brow at him, you're pretty. Smooth. Leo whispered to Jason, who just elbowed him in return. No. Jason denied firmly, though his eyes quickly looked down at his plate. Just curious where she wound up. It seems Reina, as her name is, wound up with moi in the second. Misaki's smile dimmed slightly as she looked at Jason. Piper gave Reina a slight pitying look. Stop that. The Predator grunted. You want a hug? Stop it, Piper. Reina nearly pouted. Wonderful, she had to deal with some preppy daughter of Venus. She's much like you, JJ. In what regard? Jason asked with a brow arched. She's very, very rude to me. Misaki pouted and her cheeks puffed out slightly in offense as she crossed her arms over her chest. Always accusing me of things or belittling my actions. Reina didn't disagree with it, Misaki has shown she was a bit of a brat so far. Skilled, yes, but still an overall brat spoiled girl. Such as? Jason asked. Misaki frowned at him. She called me a stalker after I went out to check on Superboy during one of his training days. You are a stalker. Jason deadpanned. Humph. See. You're both so rude to me. Misaki huffed. She looked at Naruto and smiled slightly as she looked back at Jason. At least one good thing came from your return. Your birthday is soon and you'll be 14. Yeah, so? Jason asked. Misaki shook her head. Silly JJ, you'll have been in service of Camp Jupiter for 10 years. We can send for Mom. Naruto chimed in as he set his now empty plate to the side and patted his stomach. He grinned. And once she's settled in, no more meals at the mess hall. Ramen every day. Jason pinched the bridge of his nose. Naruto. You're an addict. What's wrong with that? Dionysus asked in indignation. Everything. Athena informed him. I fail to see how an addiction to a salty broth that has no positive attributes and has yet to show any negative effects is a problem. Dionysus tapped on his stomach to emphasize his knowledge on the subject. Maybe, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm still winning. Naruto grinned when the blue-eyed boy growled at him. Somebody sounds jealous. Of what? What am I supposed to be jealous of? Jason asked with a scowl. Misaki looked between the two before she frowned at Jason. Did I miss something? Because normally that doesn't happen. Jason thinks he's winning because he killed a sea monster and saved a giant cat. Naruto explained simply. He leaned forward and rested on his crossed arms. But, he's not. And since he missed my 13th birthday last year, he doesn't know why. Misaki's mood seemed to sour. Her eyes had gained a gleam that made Jason's danger sense, a sense every demigod seemed to have, skyrocket. Her fists clenched so tight that her knuckles turned white and her smile strained, visibly tight in her cheeks. Oh yes. She practically bit out. You're definitely winning, Naruto. What's this? Aphrodite frowned. Called it. Apollo grinned. Will you tell me what happened? Jason asked as he threw caution to the wind. Misaki's eyes fell on Jason and he suddenly no longer felt like the son of Jupiter, but like a deer in front of a tiger. Quickly, Jason tried to back out before his clothes became too small once again. Oh or, don't. I'll just get it out of Nar later. No, Jason. Allow me to tell you. Masaki's voice could be mistaken for a hiss. When Naruto turned 13, a girl from the third cohort gave him a very sweet gift. She was about to retire from the Legion and Naruto had helped her out greatly on a quest they had been on with Tim. Jason looked to Naruto, who shrugged. We went out to kill some monsters in San Francisco. Nothing special. Well, obviously, it was something special. Masaki disagreed with a frown on her face. Otherwise Cornelia wouldn't have kissed you. Oh snap. Hermes said. Leo snapped his fingers 3 times, side to side. Oh no, she didn't. Jason furrowed his brow and racked his brain. Cornelia, wasn't she the daughter of Ceres? Dark hair and brown eyes. Aphrodite turned her harrowing gaze to Demeter. It's not my fault my daughter kissed him first. And I bet it was only a peck. Aphrodite still kept her gaze on Demeter, who squirmed a bit in discomfort. Yep. Naruto chirped. He seemed to not notice the twitch that had appeared in Masaki's eye as a grin spread across his face. And she kissed me. Right on the lips. That, little, Aphrodite's eye nearly twitched. Aphrodite, have care with the words you use. Demeter warned. And you, Demeter, should keep watch over your crop. To make sure none spoil. Was that a threat? Oh, Demeter, Aphrodite smiled. I don't make threats. That's debatable. Artemis muttered. On one hand, Jason wanted to congratulate Naruto and express his jealousy to the younger blonde being kissed before him. He now saw why Naruto was winning. However, on the other hand, Jason also wanted to leave the mess hall right now. For, in the corner of his eye, Jason saw Masaki had snapped the fork in her hand in half. The fork was made of metal. Durable metal that Naruto, who could warp imperial gold in his hands, couldn't break. She-Hulk alert. Talia whistled. Love is a powerful driving force. The love goddess said coolly. A nuisance, really. Do not test me right now, Artemis, Aphrodite snipped. I am in no mood for your ridiculous attitude towards my domain. Artemis noticed that Ares had stepped away from his throne. As did her twin, Hermes, and her father. They'll be back before the next chapter starts, Athena said, having noticed their absence first. Wisely, Jason chose the latter and gave Naruto a quick farewell before he fled. He wanted to live so that one day a girl could kiss him, too. And her name is Piper. Jason kissed Piper's cheek. Good boy. The daughter of love smirked, glancing at her blonde friend down the way. Annabeth nodded back at her. The notes the two girls swapped were really helpful with keeping their boyfriends in line. They were planning to involve Hazel soon, if only to make her life while at Camp Jupiter a mite easier. Frank, unaware of the cause of the sense of foreboding he suddenly felt, closed the book. Okay, that's another chapter down. Who's next? The end.